Chapter 48. After returning to the dormitory and washing up, Feng Qi leisurely laid on his bed. And Mo Fei, who was studying hard at his desk, couldn't help but say sourly, "I'm jealous. Why do I have to study hard while you can just lie in bed and imagine your future life at the university? What's there to be jealous about? Star City University's recommendation. Do you want it?" Feng Qi rolled his eyes. "No, my goal is the Institute of Science and Technology. I yearn for the Sea of Stars." Mo Fei grinned. Hearing this, Feng Qi didn't mock him, which was unusual. He had seen Mo Fei's future information and knew that he really did it. Although he wasn't a famous scientific research genius, he had many achievements in his field. In the future, he was able to find useful information at the Scarlet Institute because Mo Fei provided him with an invisible reconnaissance robot. When you graduate from the Institute of Science and Technology, do you plan to work at the Institute of Science and Technology? That's right. In the field of scientific research, only the Institute of Science and Technology and the Scarlet Institute are worthy of my attention. You know that I like mechanics, so the Institute of Science and Technology is the most suitable place for me. Hearing this, Feng Qi's expression changed. "You know about the Scarlet Institute?" "Not really. When you weren't here, a teacher from the Institute of Science and Technology came to our school to give a lecture. He told us that the strongest in the field of mechanics was undoubtedly the Institute of Science and Technology, but the best in the field of biology was the Scarlet Institute. It's just that the Scarlet Institute has a high level of privilege and confidentiality, so it's difficult for ordinary people to come in contact with them. Those who can join the Scarlet Institute are generally seniors with achievements in the field of biology. They don't directly recruit graduates." Field of biology? This was the first time Feng Qi understood the core research direction of the Scarlet Institute. Thinking about the Rune Transformation Project, he suddenly realized that it was related to biology. "Why are you interested in the Scarlet Institute? Aren't you not interested in this field?" Mo Fei asked curiously, interrupting Feng Qi's thoughts. "I'm just asking casually. Actually, I've always been curious about something. Why are you so interested in the field of science and technology? Clearly, the people around you have all chosen cultivation." Hearing this, Mo Fei pondered for a moment and said, "If I say that this era is the most suitable era for the development of technology, would you believe me? I don't believe it. Even the most powerful nuclear weapons have no effect on the domain, other than providing convenience in our lives and driving the rapid development of society. I can't think of any other use of technology in resisting the domain's invasion." "You're wrong. The reason why nuclear weapons can't do anything to a domain is because the rules of the domain are different from the world we live in. Therefore, nuclear weapons can't do anything to a domain with different rules. The reason why cultivators can cause harm to domain creatures is because we rely on cultivation to obtain spirit qi in our bodies. And spirit qi is one of the nomological forces that all domains are connected to." Glancing at Feng Qi, who was deep in thought, Mo Fei continued, "Currently, the direction of scientific research and development has changed. We're researching how to combine spirit qi and technology to create psionic weapons and equipment with spirit qi to fight against domain creatures. This direction is also the core direction of modern mechanical science. With the development of the era, earth-shattering changes will occur. At that time, there will be all kinds of technological weapons that can cause harm to domain creatures and even damage domains. That's why I said that technology will lead the future." Hearing this, Feng Qi was puzzled. Since psionic weapons that combine spirit qi and technology could cause harm to domain creatures, why didn't he see any information about this in the future database? "Although I have a direction, I can't guarantee exactly how long it will take to succeed. Perhaps it will take a few decades, or a few hundred years, or even tens of thousands of years." Mo Fei could not help but sigh as he spoke. "Why is the time span so long? Don't you have a rough time?" Feng Qi couldn't help but ask. Facing his question, Mo Fei nodded and said, "The development of science and technology is different from cultivation. There are many bottlenecks, but every time a bottleneck is broken, science and technology will welcome a leap in development. It took human civilization millions of years to go from the Stone Age to the agricultural age. However, it only took us 300 years to go from improving the steam engine to announcing the arrival of the industrial age to discovering electromagnetic induction and entering the electric age. Therefore, breaking through the bottleneck can usher in rapid development of science and technology. However, no one knows when the next bottleneck will be broken. The only thing we can be sure of is that when the bottleneck is broken, human civilization will definitely welcome a leap in development. Is there no limit to scientific research and development? Who knows, but at least history has proven that we are far from reaching the limit. In history, a scientist named Kelvin said that the edifice of physics has been built, and the rest is just the repair work to be done by future generations. In the end, someone came up with quantum mechanics, and then someone came up with the theory of relativity, completely destroying the theory that physics has reached the limit. Looking at Feng Qi, who nodded to express his understanding, Mo Fei continued. That's all. Let's return to the original topic. Let's talk about why this era is the best era for the development of science and technology. The growth of the field of science mainly comes from the accumulation of knowledge. Back then, scientists could learn all the knowledge of physics in their 20s and develop new concepts and knowledge for future generations to learn on this basis. Future generations need to continue to open up new paths on this basis. By the time they finish learning the knowledge created by their predecessors and come up with their own concepts and theories, they may be in their 30s. To put it simply, the development of science is like building a building. Future generations must first climb the floors built by their predecessors before they can continue to build new floors, unless they open up a new scientific field. Therefore, lifespan limits the development of science. Today, the average age of learning physics is 53 years old, which is 33 years higher than the original age. As science and technology continue to improve, knowledge will continue to accumulate. A person will not be able to learn all the knowledge accumulated by their predecessors even until they die, let alone develop and innovate. Upon hearing this, Feng Qi suddenly understood what Mo Fei was trying to say. So, what you mean is that in the new era full of spirit energy, the lifespan of human beings will increase. They can live to more than 100 years old, and cultivators can even live to more than 200 years old. The development of science will also lead to new opportunities for development. Mo Fei nodded with a smile on his face. Therefore, I would say that this is the best era for the development of science. Spirit energy can help us extend our lifespan, and the combination of spirit energy and technology can give birth to powerful psionic weapons and equipment. The future of science and technology will be a blue ocean with endless possibilities. Looking at the yearning in Mo Fei's eyes, Feng Qi's heart was touched. Originally, he only wanted to promote the development of human civilization's cultivation and let all humans complete the evolution of life so that they could gain the power to fight against domain creatures. After listening to Mo Fei's words, he felt that the development of science should not be underestimated. The bottleneck now was how to combine science and spirit energy. If he broke through this bottleneck, then all kinds of new technological weapons would appear in the future, such as psionic armor, psionic firearms, psionic weapons, and so on. The conversation with Mo Fei gave Feng Qi a new idea for the future development of human civilization. It took time to break through the bottleneck, and he had plenty of time. He had 1,500 years of technology accumulation every time. He did not believe that he could not break through this bottleneck of science and technology development. Of course, it was definitely not now. He felt that this content was complicated just thinking about it. Even if he found the relevant information in the future database, it would be very troublesome to bring it back. Before obtaining the infinite memory function mentioned by the narrator, he would not consider promoting the development of science and technology of human civilization for the time being. It was not that he did not want to, but he had more than enough heart, but his memory was not enough. Chapter 49. The conversation with Mo Fei gave Feng Qi a new direction of planning for the future. He wanted to light up the technology tree of human civilization so that humans could break through the technological bottleneck and obtain the technology related to the combination of spirit energy and technology. But before he could solve the memory problem and other problems, this plan could only be a plan and could not be put into action. After all, the development of science and technology was different from the study of cultivation. It required a lot of information, and he could not rely purely on memory to bring this knowledge back to reality. Thinking of this, he yearned for the infinite memory ability that the narrator had mentioned. If he could obtain such an ability, it would be equivalent to carrying a portable hard drive with him every time he entered the future dream. He could copy a lot of information from the future database at any time. While thinking about it, he found that his limitations in the future dream mainly came from 3 points. The first point was that he did not have a Star City Sanctuary user account, so he could only read the techniques once every time he entered the future dream. Moreover, he could only read the techniques that were rated 3 stars or below. The second point was Xiao Hei's pursuit. Xiao Hei was like a predator. Every time he entered the future dream, he could not escape from its pursuit. Moreover, he could not find any information related to Xiao Hei in the Star City database, so he was helpless. He could not beat it, and he could not escape. If it were not for Xiao Hei, even if he did not have a Star City Sanctuary user account, he could rely on killing the living dead or domain creatures to quickly become stronger. The third point was the replenishment of energy when he entered the dream. This was the relatively easy problem to solve among the 3 limitations. However, in this era, the channels for capital gains such as stocks and futures had been eliminated. It was difficult to quickly snowball his capital by looking at the future database. Although the future database did record many entrepreneurial projects that could make him rich, these projects generally required time and energy. They could not be done overnight, and they were not the choices he wanted. However, he already had a direction in which he could get rich. That was to create the game Savior. Before that, he needed to find a person because Savior was born on the basis of the virtual engine created by this person. If Savior could be created in advance, it would certainly have a great impact on the future. At the same time, it would also solve a big problem in reality, which was how to improve the combat ability of cultivators and ensure the safety of actual combat training. This method of making money could not only promote the progress of human civilization, but also yield rich profits. It was the only entrepreneurial project that he was interested in. After thinking for a while, Feng Qi came back to his senses. Looking at Mo Fei, who was already revising, he did not stay idle. After taking out the tablet from his suitcase, he began to look at the basic knowledge of cultivation. There was no end to learning. Even if there was a future dream, he still felt that he could not lose the basic knowledge of cultivation. Currently, the cultivation techniques that were copied from the future were all 1 to 3 stars cultivation techniques. If he could come into contact with cultivation techniques that were 3 stars and above in the future, the level of complexity would be greatly increased. Therefore, mastering the basics of cultivation would help him in his plagiarism. It was the same for all knowledge. First, one had to understand the principle, then memorize it. That way, one would be able to achieve twice the result with half the effort. To him, learning was a process of enriching himself. He didn't find it boring. Instead, the more knowledge he had in his mind, the more he felt satisfied. It was late at night, but the dormitory was still brightly lit. Other than Feng Qi and Mo Fei, who were studying hard, countless students were also about to welcome a turning point in their lives and making their final push. The graduation exam was in 5 days. At that time, all the recruitment teachers from the major universities would arrive. Other than passing the basic exam, the students also needed to pass the interview and review of the recruitment teachers from the major universities. The teaching quality of Star City High School was top-notch in Star City. However, almost half of the students would be eliminated every year. Less than 1% of the students would be able to enter the top 100 universities. It was very cruel, but also very realistic. Those who passed would receive the best treatment. They only needed to focus on studying and there was a high chance that they would become human elites in the future. If they failed, they could only enter a second-rate university or even directly walk into society to seek a living. After all, the resources in this world were limited. On the long road to fighting against the domain creatures, the only thing that the upper echelons of humanity could do was to gather the limited resources and provide them to the elites first. Then, the elites would promote the development of human civilization. After studying until 2 in the morning, Feng Qi and Mo Fei chose to turn off the lights and sleep. The next morning, Feng Qi slowly woke up. "Why aren't you getting up? If you don't leave now, you'll have to line up at the cafeteria." Hearing this, he couldn't help but be stunned. Then, he remembered that he had already left Star City University. There was no free 24-hour buffet to provide. Moreover, the size of Star City High School's cafeteria was far smaller than Star City University's. It was very crowded every time it was mealtime. "Let's go, Fan." Realizing the seriousness of the problem, he quickly jumped out of bed, quickly dressed, and washed up. Then, he ran to the school cafeteria with Mo Fei. Fan was not active. There was something wrong with his thinking. Although the food at Star City High School was far from comparable to Star City University's, he was still very satisfied with this meal. The only regret was that the food here was not free. This meal cost him more than 300 yuan in cash and emptied the remaining balance in his meal card. This also made Mo Fei stunned. Fortunately, he was already recommended to Star City University. Otherwise, he felt that his card balance would not be able to support him if he ate like this every day. When they arrived at the classroom, many students had already arrived in advance and were revising. Coming to their seats, he and Mo Fei also entered a state of study. When it was 8 o'clock, Lao Wang of history walked into the classroom with a stack of white paper. When he came to the podium, Wang Jinsheng opened his mouth and said, "Students, there will be an event at the graduation party in a few days called the time capsule. Next, I will give each of you a blank piece of paper. You will write down what you want to say to the future on the white paper. When the time comes, you will put them into the time capsule and bury them underground during the party. You will only open them in the future." As he spoke, Wang Jinsheng handed the stack of white paper to the students sitting in the front row, and they distributed it. Soon, everyone in the classroom had a blank piece of paper. At this time, Wang Jinsheng looked at the students below and smiled. "Think carefully before you write. You can write down what you want to say to the future, or what you want to look forward to in the future, or what you regret in the present. When you take it out one day in the future, it might make you feel very emotional. You can write first. I will collect it in the afternoon." As Wang Jinsheng spoke, he turned and walked out of the classroom. "What do you want to write?" Mo Fei looked at Feng Qi and asked curiously. Hearing this, Feng Qi fell into deep thought. He could see his own future, so what he wrote did not seem to be important to him. Even so, he did not choose to be perfunctory. After thinking about it, he felt that it was better to write a message for the future. Therefore, he took a pen and fell into deep thought. At this time, Mo Fei also lowered his head and began to write his vision and message for the future on the white paper. At this time, the classroom was very quiet. The students were all in deep thought. After thinking for a while, Feng Qi picked up the pen and wrote on the white paper, "I wish you a long life, Feng Qi." Chapter 50. During the 5 days after returning to school, Feng Qi didn't waste any time and devoted himself to studying. On this day, a group of invigilators came to Star City High School. The graduation exam was on schedule. The students who had been preparing for a long time couldn't help but feel nervous at this moment because today's success or failure was related to their future. The first day was the basic subject exam, such as history, the origin of magic, the origin of cultivation methods, ideology and morality, and so on. In the morning, the invigilators brought the exam papers to the classrooms of each class. Before the exam began, the students still had time to prepare, so they all seized the time to read. Feng Qi leisurely sat in his seat without any ripples in his heart. After all, he was already guaranteed admission, so it didn't matter whether he participated in the exam or not. Looking at the time, there were still 10 minutes before the exam, so he immediately stood up and prepared to return to the dormitory. At this time, a beautiful figure appeared at the door of the classroom. She was wearing the Star City High School's uniform and had a ponytail. She was about 160 meters tall and had snow-white skin. At this time, she was looking around the classroom, and finally her eyes focused on Feng Qi. Feng Qi had a helpless expression as the girl stepped in front of him. Feng Qi, this exam is our final battle. I hope you will do your best. I will use this exam to prove that I am better than you. Is that necessary? You're too competitive, he said helplessly. The girl in front of him was the class monitor of the third class next door. She had always regarded him as a competitor, but every time her exam results were worse than his, so from time to time she would come over to declare war. In his opinion, this woman was too Chinibu. She should just focus on her studies. Why would she have so much trouble? He had no interest in competing with her. Facing Feng Qi's indifferent attitude, the girl seemed to be a bit angry. 6 years. I have been suppressed by you for 6 years. Do you know how I felt during these 6 years? I always wanted to surpass you and become the first in the grade, but every time I failed. This is my last chance. I will prove to you that I am not weaker than you. Don't show it to me. I don't want to see it either. What can I do? I'm just performing normally in every exam. It's not like I'm cheating. Do you think I want to be first? Hearing Feng Qi's pretentious words, his classmates couldn't bear it anymore and started to jeer. Feng Qi, stop pretending. I beg you, stop pretending. I can't take it anymore. An invisible act of pretentiousness is the most fatal. As expected of you, Feng Qi. Acting tough like the wind is always by your side. Who is it? Who exactly is it? What a shocking, domineering aura. It actually shook my heart, making me feel like I can't hold it in anymore. Hearing the words of his classmates, he had a helpless look on his face. Who was acting cool? Wasn't what I said the truth? I want to get first place in my grade. What can I do about it? My normal performance is already number 1. Feng Qi, I hope you will perform well. I will definitely not lose the last battle. With that, the girl turned and walked out of the classroom. At this moment, the invigilator sitting at the podium looked down at the list of examinees in his hand, then looked at Feng Qi's seat. Then, he looked at Feng Qi and said, "Why are you still here? Why are the guaranteed students still here? The exam is starting in 5 minutes. Get out of here." "Yes, teacher." Hearing this, Feng Qi hurriedly got up and walked out of the classroom, brushing past the girl who was standing there in a daze. "You got a recommendation?" Just as Feng Qi was about to walk out of the classroom, the girl asked his back. "Yes, so the first place is yours this time. Enjoy the feeling of reaching the top." He grinned and then walked towards the dormitory without looking back. At this moment, boos came from the classroom again. The exam lasted for 1 day, and the results were out on the same day. The process of marking the papers was very convenient. All the examinees had to do was throw their papers into the marking machine brought by the invigilator. The machine would automatically connect to the network and check for errors. In less than an hour, all the papers of the entire school would be marked. In Feng Qi's class, everyone passed the foundation exam. After Wang Jinsheng announced the results with a smile, the entire class cheered. Next, they would have to face the examination of the teachers from each school. When the time came, all the classrooms would be cleared and the teachers from each school would be in charge of the examination. The entire examination process would be recorded and monitored in real time to ensure fairness. For example, if a student wanted to apply for Star City University's combat class, he would have to go to the teacher's class for an interview. During this time, the teacher would use the machine to check the blood strength of the student and then ask the student to talk about their understanding of combat techniques or directly test whether the student had combat talent. Although there was a lot of flexibility in the examination, all the invigilators were very professional and would not let students who were just here to make up the numbers pass. The next morning, the examination began. The students came to the teacher's class and lined up in front of the teacher's class to take the examination one by one. At this time, Feng Qi and Wang Jinsheng were sitting on the lawn outside the teaching building and chatting. "Lao Wang, how many people in our class do you think can pass the examination and enter the top 100 schools?" "About 20%. The rest will have to stay in school and take the second round of the school's examination. However, I'm sure that none of the students in our class will enter society early. I have confidence in them." At this point, Wang Jinxing suddenly paused and looked at Feng Qi. "I almost forgot. The school suggested that every class should prepare a program for the graduation party after the examination. Do you have any ideas?" Feng Qi was stunned when he heard this. "What ideas can I have? Why don't I represent my class and recite a poem? Don't embarrass me. Help me think if there are any programs that can make people's eyes light up. You should also think about what specialties or skills you have that can be shown." When he heard Lao Wang's words, he could not help but fall into deep thought. Specialties? Skills? Why don't I go on stage and perform the second course's reverse car into the garage? Wang Jinsheng was speechless. Chapter 51. This chapter is best accompanied by the music Dear Traveler. The two-day examination ended. Among the students who received their results, some were happy, some were sad, some were crying, and some were crying tears of joy. Many sleepless nights were spent studying and running on the road with their dreams, but they still reached the end of the long run to pursue their dreams. That night, the graduation party was held as scheduled. The school also made an exception and allowed the students to drink. Hence, Wang Jinsheng took out the wine from his storage and shared it with his classmates. The night wind was loud, and the school field was brightly lit. The school also spent a lot of money for the graduation party. They invited famous singers and dance troupes in Star City to send the students off. The students couldn't hide the disappointment on their faces. How could they give up their friendship so easily? "Lunatic, congratulations on getting into the Academy of Science and Technology. Cheers. Your eyes are red. I'm happy. Aren't you famous? I'm happy for you. Then why do you look so sad?" Looking at Mo Fei, who was as stubborn as him, Feng Qi downed the wine in his glass in one gulp. "Stop pretending. It's too fake. Let's find a time to get together every year. Don't break our friendship after so many years. However, all good things must come to an end. Let's fight for the future of mankind together. Fight for the future of mankind." Mo Fei also raised his glass and downed it in one gulp. Wang Jinsheng, who was not far away, saw this scene. For some reason, his eyes became wet. Once upon a time, when he graduated from Star City University, he made the same promise with his best friend to fight for the future of mankind. However, a few weeks ago, he received bad news about his good friend. He, who fought on the front line against the domain creatures, fell into eternal slumber in the domain to protect his teammates. They agreed to find a time to get together every year, but after graduation, they didn't have time to meet again. They didn't get to see each other again until they died. "Lao Wang, come a drink." Hearing the shout, Wang Jinsheng suppressed the sadness in his heart. A smile appeared on his face as he walked towards Feng Qi and the others with a bottle of wine. Amidst the laughter, the students told each other about their plans for the future and wished the best for the other students. Everyone suppressed the sadness of parting. When the song Dear Traveler was played at the gala, some of the students suddenly cried as they listened to the melody of parting. While the other students couldn't help but laugh at him, their eyes couldn't help but turn moist. The emotions in their hearts spread like flames. At this moment, Wang Jinsheng stood up and announced his decision to his classmates. He also said that he would be leaving Star City University soon. Finally, he bent down and bowed to his classmates. "To be able to meet all of you is the fortune of 3 lifetimes. It's just that I won't be able to travel together with all of you in the future. Now that we've parted, I don't know when we'll meet again. I hope that all of you will have a bright future ahead of you." The students were surprised to hear Wang Jinsheng's farewell. However, they all agreed with Wang Jinsheng's decision. They felt that Lao Wang was fully capable of going to a wider world. At the same time, they couldn't help but feel that they were lucky to be able to spend 6 years under Lao Wang's guidance. The next batch of students wouldn't be able to meet a teacher like Lao Wang again. Wang Jinsheng didn't just give them knowledge. He also gave them confidence in the future. He also gave them the mentality and courage to face difficult situations. Teachers often had this, but teachers didn't. The students sent Wang Jinsheng their blessings. They also firmly believed that no matter where Lao Wang went, he would still shine. At the end of the gala, it started to rain. As the class representative, Feng Chi brought the students messages for the future to the time capsule in front of the gala stage. As a witness, before sealing the messages into the time capsule, he began to look through the students' messages for the future. You guys must be very happy in the future. I think all the domains have been dispelled. What a beautiful new world that will be. I really envy you guys for being born in a new era without domains. But I also wish you guys the best for living in a new era without domains. I hope you guys won't forget me in the future. I have worked tirelessly for the future of mankind. I contributed to the brilliant era that you guys are living in. Hello, future. My name is Yin Shuebwa. I was born in the days when human civilization was on the verge of extinction. I will also work tirelessly for the future of mankind. I bless myself and the future that mankind will win. Lao Wang often said that you can only see the dawn after a long night. Born in the dark era, we can't imagine what the future will be like. But I firmly believe that you guys can see the arrival of a brilliant era. I will also work hard for the arrival of that day. Come on, work hard, fight. Don't give up, don't give in. I will do my best for your beautiful future. Looking through the students' messages for the future, Feng Chi couldn't help but tear up. The students were full of confidence for the future. They felt that it would definitely be a brilliant era. But he had never seen the real future. The end of human civilization didn't happen as they wished, and there was no brilliant era. The truth was that human civilization had come to an end and would forever be shrouded in darkness. Taking a deep breath, he stuffed the letters into the time capsule. When the letters from each class were stuffed into the capsule, the audience burst into thunderous applause. The time capsule was slowly lifted up, carrying the students' blessings for him and their expectations and yearning for a beautiful future. It was slowly sealed into the ground. As he turned around and left, Feng Chi reached out and wiped the tears from the corners of his eyes. His eyes became extremely firm. The future will definitely be as you wish, I promise. Parting was imminent. Listening to the singer on the stage, singing Dear Traveler, countless voices in the audience began to sing along. Farewell, the train on the water is about to arrive. On the road to the future, no one will turn back. Say goodbye. Even if you miss it, don't look back. On the other side of the sea, there must be an empty shore. Have the most gentle dream, full of the world, in a hurry. In the vast time and space, listen to the hearts of millions of people. Keep losing along the way. You will keep witnessing throughout your life. No matter how much scenery you see, your eyes are as clear as before. Love still moves you. Dear traveler, there is no road without wind and waves. There will be loneliness, there will be sorrow, but there will also be endless hope. Dear traveler, this journey will be short but long, and everything will eventually converge into the most abundant scene. Say goodbye here. The lights behind him gradually dimmed. Every child who loves home has to raise the sails for a long journey. Say goodbye. The beautiful dream will not dissipate. Your love rests in the crook of your arm, and your heart will be soft for the rest of your life. Since their encounter was a gift from time, then when you say goodbye, you must smile and remember it in your heart. Life is infinitely small, but it is also infinitely magnificent. You spend your whole life searching for or saying goodbye, and it is enough to move people. Dear traveler, you are still the same as in my memory. Through the crowd, through the human world, and then further away. Chapter 52. The train to the end of one's life would pass by one station after another. Star City High School had become Feng Chi's past. He bid farewell to 6 years of youth, but he also left behind beautiful memories. With the blessings of his classmates, he stepped on the road back to Star City University. After getting off the bus, he was about to walk towards the entrance of Star City University when the driver uncle's voice came from behind him. Young man, don't embarrass our Star City University. No matter how weak you are, you can't have a score of 0. Hearing the driver uncle shout, he felt helpless, but he still turned to look at the driver uncle and waved. Okay, see you again, uncle. Hearing this, the driver uncle grinned and gave Feng Chi a thumbs up. Then, he started the school bus and left in a hurry. Arriving at the entrance of Star City University, Feng Chi's details appeared on the security uncle's tablet as the device scanned his body. After confirming his identity as a new student, he was allowed to pass. Walking along the marble road with statues on both sides, there were many new students like him who were dragging their luggage to report. They had a smile on their faces as they curiously looked at the environment of Star City University. They seemed to be looking forward to the arrival of their new life at the university. The lotus flowers in the lotus pond were in full bloom, and the weeping willows nearby were swaying with the wind. The new students reported to the office building on the east side of the dormitory building. They needed to pick up their uniforms, textbooks, and other items there. Walking along the marble road, a figure attracted Feng Chi's attention. He was wearing clothes that were full of patches, carrying a big cloth bag, and the cloth shoes on his feet were tattered. The most eye-catching thing was his shiny head, which reflected a dazzling light under the sun. He also noticed that this new student had a mark on his head. From these characteristics, he could basically confirm that this was a Buddhist disciple. As if noticing Feng Chi's gaze, the monk suddenly turned his head and looked at him. Then, he walked towards him with a smile. "Benefactor? Oh no, classmate, do you have anything to eat? I'm so hungry." Feng Chi was speechless. After reporting, you can go to Shuefu restaurant to eat. They provide a 24-hour buffet. Hearing Feng Chi's words, the monk was slightly embarrassed. Is the food here expensive? Realizing that the monk was in dire financial straits, he smiled and answered, "The food here is free. Meat is free too." Tyrant was pleasantly surprised. Feng Chi was speechless. "You're a monk, yet you still eat meat? Wine and meat pass through the intestines, but Buddha stays in the heart. Besides, I'm a cultivator. If I don't eat meat, how can I keep up with my nutrition? My family condition doesn't allow me to eat energy supplements every day." "So is the meat free?" the monk asked expectantly. "Free? Then this is really a good place." Tyrant was all smiles. Sizing up the monk once again, Feng Chi asked curiously, "What's the matter? Why are you dressed like this? There are so many relief stations in the city, it shouldn't be a problem to give you a new set of clothes, right?" Faced with the question, the monk sighed and said with a frown, "I'm an ascetic monk. Master believes that the suffering in the world is limited. As long as we suffer more, the rest of the world will suffer less. That's why I'm dressed like this." Hearing this, Feng Chi was in awe. Spiritual beliefs could sometimes bring people strength, regardless of whether they were illusory or not. Especially when in a desperate situation, the spiritual strength brought by faith might be able to summon the courage to break through despair. However, the monk's next words made the respect in his heart vanish without a trace. "But Master can't control me now. I'll change into my school uniform later." Looking at the smile on the monk's face, Feng Chi felt that he must have been holding back before entering Star City University. While chatting, they exchanged phone numbers and came to the front of the admissions office building. From afar, they saw many students wearing Star City University uniforms standing in 2 rows, smiling as they watched their arrival. Seeing this scene, the monk couldn't help but be curious. The seniors of Star City University are really enthusiastic. They even specially came to welcome us. Hearing this, Feng Chi pointed to a sign on the right side of the office building. "Look at what's written on that sign." Hearing this, the monk immediately turned to look. When he saw the contents of the sign, his expression suddenly changed. The sign read, "If a new student wants to pass through here, you must prove your strength and courage. Star City University doesn't accept weaklings and cowards." It can't be. They're giving us a show of strength on the first day of school? When Tyrant saw Feng Chi smile and how calm he appeared, he was a little confused. Maybe it's just a formality. Why don't he give it a try? Realizing that the monk wanted to use him as a pathfinder, Feng Chi nodded. "Okay." Then he pushed his suitcase and walked toward the office building. Seeing this, the monk didn't follow. Instead, he hid behind and began to observe the situation. If the beating was fierce, he decided to cushion his body with something to cushion it. If it was just a formality, he would directly attack. Seeing that Feng Chi had already pushed his suitcase to the middle of the seniors, the monk held his breath. However, the scene of him getting beaten up didn't happen. The seniors standing on both sides greeted Feng Qi with smiles on their faces. Although the monk couldn't hear what they were saying, in his opinion, the seniors didn't seem to have any ill intentions. However, what he didn't know was how special Feng Qi's position in Star City University was. No matter which class the students were from, they had all come to listen to his lectures. For this knowledgeable teacher, the students couldn't wait to curry favor with him. Who would dare to offend him? However, in the monk's opinion, the first test for new students was purely for show. The seniors only went through the formalities with him and greeted each other. That was all. However, just as he was about to follow Feng Qi to the office building, a new student stepped into the welcome area before him. Then, under the monk's dumbfounded expression, the new student was beaten until he rolled on the ground. The monk was speechless. Seeing this scene, the monk quickly retracted his footsteps. Somewhat confused, he took out his phone with a broken screen and dialed Feng Qi's number. When the call connected, the monk hurriedly asked, "Student, why are you fine when you went over? What's the situation?" "Oh, the seniors are very kind. How is that possible? I saw them beat up a new student with my own eyes. They didn't hit any vital parts, but it looked painful. Are you an ascetic monk? Are you afraid of pain?" "Yes, I'm very afraid. Maybe I was a little arrogant when I went over, so you should be more arrogant too. The seniors despise cowards the most. When the time comes, look fierce and walk with your feet splayed out. In short, you can't lose in terms of momentum." The monk was speechless. After hanging up the phone, he took a deep breath. Then he carried his cloth bag and walked toward the office building. Although he was panicking inside, he pretended to be extremely fierce, and his steps were extremely arrogant. Seeing this scene, the seniors who came to welcome him could not help but be stunned. They had seen arrogant people before, but they had never seen someone so arrogant on the first day of school. At this moment, they felt that they were being seriously provoked by this new student. If they didn't beat him up, how could they show their faces as seniors? Beat him up. Under the monk's horrified expression, the seniors pounced on him in groups. Originally, it was just a show of strength, but the monk turned it into a real beating. Moments later, the monk lay on the ground with a bloody nose and a swollen face, panting heavily. Until now, he still couldn't figure out what went wrong. Was I not arrogant enough? Chapter 53. After collecting the uniform, Feng Qi did not collect any other items such as textbooks. Instead, he went straight to the principal's office. After knocking on the door, Bai Fuxing's voice came from inside. "Come in." He pushed the door open and entered. Bai Fuxing was wearing a tang suit and was leisurely making tea. "Grandmaster, what should I do next?" Faced with the question, Bai Fuxing smiled and pointed to the chair in front of the desk. "I've already arranged it. Take a seat first." After Feng Qi sat down, Bai Fuxing took out the class schedule from the drawer and handed it to Feng Qi. "Next, you'll be leading the 23rd Combat Class 3. The students in this class have a special identity. You'll understand after you get to know them." Combat Class 3? Feng Qi immediately thought of the fake monk. He seemed to be a student of the 23rd Combat Class 3. "Grandmaster, tell me, what's so special about this class?" Faced with the question, Bai Fuxing smiled and said, "There aren't many people in this class. There are only 11 people in this class, but every one of them is specially enrolled. In other words, they're students who didn't take the exam. They're similar to your friend, Mu Qing. In other words, they're all students who got in through connections." Feng Qi said helplessly. He wanted to cultivate human elites who could affect the future, not a bunch of students who got in through connections. "You don't have the qualifications to lead a normal class, even if you want to. I can't handle this, so I'll just put the specially enrolled students into a class for you to do your best. However, don't look down on these specially enrolled students. There's no lack of talented people among them. In short, you'll understand after you get to know them." When he thought of the fake monk, he felt that he was unreliable. Looking at the suspicious Feng Qi, Bai Fuxing continued, "Don't look at me like that. If you're not satisfied, we'll think of other ways. You're now the homeroom teacher of Combat Class 3. That's it then. I'll try first." While feeling helpless, he could only agree for the time being. After leaving the principal's office, Feng Qi returned to the dormitory. After putting away his luggage and other items, He looked at the time. It was almost 11 o'clock. He took out his phone, contacted Mu Qing and Lin Ran, and asked them out for lunch. Then, he left the dormitory and went straight to Shuefa restaurant. The scorching sun was high in the sky, roasting the earth. Just as he stepped into Shuefa restaurant, he noticed that Mu Qing and Lin Ran had already arrived. They were sitting in the northern corner of the restaurant. After taking the tray, he went to the buffet area and started to take his food. The weather was hot, so Shuefa restaurant thoughtfully prepared many drinks to cool down. For example, mung bean soup, lemon juice, winter melon soup, ice cream, and so on. Star City University's food never disappointed him. After taking a whole plate of food, he walked towards the northern corner and sat down beside Lin Ran. "Welcome back, Miss Fong," Lin Ran said with a smile. "How's the latest advanced spell theory I bought for you?" Hearing this, the smile on Lin Ran's face froze. Then, he lowered his head and started eating, trying to avoid the topic. Seeing Lin Ran like this, he knew that Lin Ran was not serious about learning. He clearly had an extraordinary understanding and talent in spell research, but his dream was to study cultivation. He really couldn't understand what was going on in Lin Ran's head. He had seen people waste food, but he had never seen someone waste their talent like Lin Ran. While feeling helpless, he turned to Mu Qing. "Senior, I have something to discuss with you." Hearing Feng Qi's words, Mu Qing looked up. Her mouth was still chewing, and her eyes were filled with confusion. She looked very cute. "You should have heard from Lin Ran that I'm going to teach a class of new students and become their homeroom teacher." Mu Qing nodded and said while chewing, "So, I want you to come to my class and become my student." Hearing this, Mu Qing couldn't help but be taken aback. Although she was studying at Star City University, as a specially enrolled student, she had a lot of freedom. She didn't want to interact with other students, so she basically learned by herself. Other than going to Shuefa restaurant, she would often go to the library and the body tempering room to train. Thinking about interacting with other students, Mu Qing quickly shook her head. She felt that if her classmates knew about her situation, they would definitely look at her in a different light. She didn't like that feeling. "Senior, not everyone is like what you think. Didn't I become your friend? You have to try interacting with other people. Be brave." At this moment, Lin Qi looked at Feng Qi expectantly and said, "Can I go? As long as you can convince the principal, you can. There's no problem with Mr. Bai. Have you talked to Mr. Bai about Mu Qing? The class I'm teaching is all specially enrolled students. There's no problem." Feng Qi smiled and nodded. Then, he continued to look at Mu Qing and said, "Senior, don't hesitate. Trust me." Facing Feng Qi's invitation, Mu Qing finally nodded. Seeing Mu Qing agree, a smile appeared on Feng Qi's face. The origin of the rebel army, formed by the scavengers, came from Mu Qing. This was certain. At the same time, Feng Qi was also certain that before Mu Qing formed the Dawn Rebels, the scavengers didn't have any ill intentions toward the residents of the city. Perhaps the people inside and outside the city didn't like each other, but in all these years, there had never been a situation where the scavengers attacked the city. On the contrary, the territory battle groups formed by the scavengers often helped the battle groups in the city to disperse the territory, and the city would occasionally provide resources to the scavengers outside the city. The relationship between the scavengers and the residents of the city was more like the relationship between the residents of two countries. But in essence, everyone was human and lived in the same home. When their home was invaded, they would work together to fight against the invaders. Perhaps there would occasionally be conflicts between them, but those conflicts weren't enough to cause the scavengers to view the residents as enemies or even want to kill them. He would find a way to resolve the conflict between the residents and the scavengers bit by bit. But the most important thing was to solve the problem of Mu Qing, the source of the chaos. In fact, until now, he still didn't understand why so many scavengers were willing to follow Mu Qing and betray all of humanity. There seemed to be many mysteries in that period of history that he hadn't discovered yet, affecting the direction of human civilization. But before he knew the truth, he had to make sure that Mu Qing didn't make any mistakes. He had a detailed understanding of Mu Qing's ability. She was the only human recorded in history who had almost perfectly fused with runic crystals, and she also had the special ability to gain strength from food, so her growth potential was terrifying. In the first battle after the betrayal, she single-handedly defeated the A-ranked Black Reef battle group and killed hundreds of people. Later on, she single-handedly resisted the encirclement of dozens of top-ranked battle groups, and her combat strength was comparable to a humanoid beast. So, it was definitely the right thing to do to appease this future Demon King. He thought of the Mu Qing he saw in the database of the future. She was tall in the picture, and her expression was cold and mature. She had the temperament of a great villain. He then raised his head and looked at Mu Qing, who had an adorable expression on her face as she ate. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't connect the two of them. The difference was too big. Chapter 54. After lunch, Feng Qi returned to his dorm. The first month of the new student's registration required special training, so he didn't have any classes arranged for him. He also didn't need to interact with the new students of Combat Class 3. He sat in front of his desk and started to look at the name list of the new students of Combat Class 3. There were a total of 11 students in Combat Class 3. He had already interacted with the monk. Maybe it was because he had been suppressed for too long, but the monk's personality made him feel unreliable. He said that he was an ascetic, but he didn't have the calmness and spirit of an ascetic. The name list said that the monk's real name was Hui Su. He came from the biggest Buddhist temple in Star City, Golden Immortal Temple. He was the only direct disciple of the current abbot. This kind of background could be said to be very big. Golden Immortal Temple wasn't famous for their temple, but rather the great wisdom domain battle group that they formed. In this era, techniques were shared all over the world, so there were still many powerful domain battle groups. The Great Wisdom Domain Battle Group was one of them. In the long years of fighting against domain invasions, this domain battle group had made many outstanding contributions and was even rated as an S-rank battle group. It was also one of the top domain battle groups in the world. He continued to look at the name list of the new students. One of them caught his attention. This new student's name was Liu Yu, but the detailed information column was completely blank. Among the 11 new students of Combat Class 3, this new student's background was the most mysterious. There was no record of his background. Even Mu Qing's background in Star City University wasn't completely secret. Even on Star City University's forum, you could search for Mu Qing's general information. Therefore, this new student called Liu Yu attracted his strong curiosity. After looking through the information of the 11 new students, he closed the name list. Other than Liu Yu, the other specially recruited students all had strong backgrounds. There were the children of the Star City Garrison Army, the children of business tycoons, the children of top domain battle groups, and also the children of top researchers. In short, it was a class of people with connections. After looking at the information of the new students, he suddenly had expectations for them. If their character and talent were good enough, he felt that he could pull this group of freshmen into the organization to fight against the Scarlet Institute. After all, these freshmen had great backing. Although they couldn't compete with the mysterious Scarlet Institute, they could still provide a lot of help for the organization's development. However, this was only his imagination. Before he was sure that this batch of new students was reliable, he wouldn't reveal any information. Otherwise, before the organization to fight against the Scarlet Institute could be formed, it might be disintegrated from the inside. He closed the freshman list and sat in front of his desk. He took out his tablet and began to browse shopping websites. Then he bought another rune crystal of Advanced Wolf. Seeing his bank balance shrink again, it would be a lie to say that he didn't feel heartache. Therefore, every time he entered the future dreamscape, he had to plan carefully so that he could maximize his benefits in the future dreamscape. After the order was generated, he opened his notebook and began to plan for the future. As he pondered, he kept adding his own thoughts to the notebook, as well as what he wanted to say to the future. His future self was the key to understanding the future. If he didn't have a future self, he wouldn't have been able to find out that the Scarlet Institute was infiltrated by domain creatures the last time he entered the future dreamscape. Perhaps he would still be futilely copying the cultivation methods of the future, but he didn't know that the internal structure had already been infiltrated. As a result, no matter what he did, he couldn't change the ending of human civilization. And the series of secret research that the Scarlet Institute was currently conducting was like a poison that corroded the foundation of civilization. If this poison wasn't removed, even if it grew into a towering tree, it would still collapse in the end. Talking to the future also allowed him to obtain a lot of important information that couldn't be found in the historical database. While thinking, Feng-Chi wrote down 4 new plans in his notebook. First, build an organization that can fight against it. Lin Ran, Mu Qing, Lao Wang, and your future students will be part of the strength of this organization. But before you have the strength to fight against it, don't expose yourself. Second, continue to investigate it, but don't take any more risks. Perhaps you can ask Mo Fei for help in this regard. In the future, he might be able to help you in the field of stealth detection. Third, I hope you can live as long as possible. It's best if you can live until the time when the great Demon King builds the Dawn Rebels. Do your best to stop her and understand what happened. Alright, as long as you live long enough, you will definitely be able to stop Lin Ran from releasing the cultivation methods. Maybe he will even create a cultivation method that's even better than the sealing style under your guidance. So, please stay strong and live on. Fourth, if possible, please leave behind a descendant and pass down the teachings of your ancestors. Do your best to help me obtain access to the database. This is very important to me. After writing down the 4 plans for the future, he was silent for a long time. He knew that after he left, his future self would be in a lot of pain. His future self would have to pay for all his acting. If he lost the ability to enter the future dreamscape, he would also lose the opportunity to continue copying the cultivation methods of the future. His future path would be very difficult. Thinking of this, he sighed and then added a paragraph at the end of the 4 plans. Don't have any doubts about yourself. You were once the most outstanding graduate of Star City High School. Even without a cheat, you can still rely on your own efforts to achieve something. Since there is no cheat to create a shortcut, then cut your way forward. Closing the notebook, he sat in front of his desk and fell into deep thought. Although he said that he was talking to the future, the content written in the notebook was actually an extension of his thoughts. In other words, even if he didn't record this information, his future self would still walk in this direction. This was because he and his future self had the same thoughts. The meaning of recording was that he wouldn't forget the details. After all, when he entered the future dreamscape, his future self in this timeline would definitely have new ideas constantly emerging in his mind. Perhaps he would change and forget his original thoughts. Therefore, the main reason why he wrote the important information in the notebook was to remind his future self not to forget. Time passed unknowingly while he was thinking. It wasn't until Lin Ran called that he realized that 4 hours had passed. It was now time for dinner. Closing the notebook, he stood up and stretched. He was ready to go to the Shuefu restaurant to have a meal. Although the energy obtained from food was very little, no matter how little mosquitoes there were, they were still meat. Eating was a kind of enjoyment for him. Therefore, no matter what, he couldn't forget to eat. Chapter 55. The next day, the rune crystal of the advanced wolf was delivered to his dorm. Feng-Chi took the box from the security guard and thanked him. He then closed the door and sat down in front of his desk. He opened the package skillfully and took out the rune crystal of the advanced wolf from the metal box. He then stuffed it into his mouth without hesitation, chewed and swallowed. This mouthful was worth 880,000. As his stomach churned and his body temperature rose, the energy progress bar on the interface started to jump. It gradually rose from 76% to 158%. Compared to the one he bought online last time, the effect of this rune crystal of the advanced wolf had improved. He wasn't surprised by this. After all, reality was not a game. Even domain creatures of the same race could not be exactly the same. It was normal for there to be differences in various aspects. Now that the energy had been replenished, he had met the requirements to enter the future dream. However, he did not choose to lie down and sleep. Instead, he opened his notebook and continued to plan for the future. He had to maximize the benefits every time he entered the future dream. While thinking, he added a few more strokes in his notebook. Feeling that it was about time, He lay down on his bed and tried to fall asleep. After closing his eyes for a while, Fengqi opened his eyes again. He realized that he seemed to have lost the ability to fall asleep quickly. Whenever he closed his eyes, his future ideas would constantly appear in his mind. He felt inexplicably anxious, and the source of his anxiety was stress. Therefore, he got up and took out 2 bottles of wine from the fridge. He opened them and poured them into his mouth. Then, he lay down on his bed again. Under the hypnotic effect of the alcohol, his mind emptied and he gradually felt sleepy. Lying on his bed, his expression gradually became peaceful. He opened his eyes and a cold wind blew against his face. The world in the future dream was still familiar. Bones piled up under his feet. Everywhere he looked was desolate. He had already mentally prepared himself. He was not shocked by the scene in front of him. Instead, he grinned and said, "Aside, did you miss me? F***CK. I have to get up and go to work again." Fengqi was speechless. "Can you be more civilized?" He said helplessly. "All right, then may I ask, dear host, what kind of F***king matter do you need to ask? I'll answer depending on my mood." Fengqi was speechless. "Nothing, go back to sleep. I'll call you if I need you." As he spoke, he lifted his right leg and kicked the head of little Can, who was just about to stand up several meters away. His goal for entering the dreamscape of the future was clear. First, he had to look up information on the characters. Then, he had to learn the basics of cultivation techniques. Finally, he had to learn a cultivation technique. If he had more time, he would also like to look up information on major events of the same era. Of course, the most important thing was to look through the messages left for him in the future. Among them, there might be some important information he needed. For example, an important account in Star City Sanctuary, a secret event that his future self would investigate, or a problem that he encountered during the establishment of the Black Ops, could give him a warning in advance. Thinking of this, he walked towards the east. In this future dreamscape, the landscape had changed slightly and the strength of the undead had decreased. Evidently, some of his actions in the real world had led to subtle changes in the future. However, there was no way to find out the exact reason. Just like a horseshoe nail that destroyed an empire, the source of the chain reaction was very likely to be a very small thing. It was just a series of chain reactions under the influence of time, resulting in a huge impact. The changes in the landscape made him search for a while before he found the black stone tablet above Star City Sanctuary. Stepping in front of the rusty stone tablet, he bit his finger and dripped his blood into the blood groove. Accompanied by the intermittent mechanical synthesis sound, the stone tablet moved to the right, revealing a metal passage. He was very familiar with this process. He immediately stepped into the metal passage and went straight to the database. Coming to the center of the underground shelter, he reached out and wiped the dust-covered control panel. After looking at the buttons, he pressed the start button. The energy reserve in the shelter started up, and the screen in front of the control panel lit up. A series of symbols flashed, the database was activated, and a list of options appeared in front of him. Full of anticipation, he first opened the search function, then entered his name, wanting to look at his future information. After a few seconds of waiting, his future information appeared. Fengqi, human trader, age, 27 years old, cause of death, public execution date of death, April 3rd, 2039, lifetime achievements, Honor Star City Academy's S-Class, Outstanding Graduate, cancelled. Gymnastics Training version 2, 0 modifier, A-Class Human Elite Medal, cancelled. Star City Academy's Outstanding Instructor, cancelled. Outstanding Contribution to Human Development Award, cancelled. Creator of Tiger Fist, creator of Body Tempering Technique, creator of Heaven and Earth Meditation. Evaluation. In his early years, when he was studying in Star City Academy, he developed a series of body cultivation techniques and spirit cultivation techniques that influenced the later generations. He was even considered by the people to be the future star with the most potential in the world. However, he failed to live up to the expectations of the people. His heart harbored rebellious thoughts, and he secretly obstructed the development of human civilization. During his time as a teacher at Star City University, he brainwashed, roped in students, and personally formed a dark organization that brought disaster to the world. He carried out a series of secret operations to hinder the development of human civilization. Fortunately, he was discovered in time. On April 3rd, 2039, he was publicly beheaded at Star City's first execution ground as a warning to others. Netizens' comments: Blue future, I'm here to spit on you. You're rotten to the core. So many people in that era had high hopes for you. Your teacher, Wang Jinsheng, even shed tears on the day of your execution. I really feel sorry for the great people of history. I can't believe they taught a traitor like you. Big heart. It's such a pity. You have talent, but you don't want to fight for the rise of human civilization. Instead, you want to bring disaster to the world. It's really detestable and sad. Battle Online. I won't comment on this person, but when I looked through the historical records, there was one thing that puzzled me. What kind of operations did Feng Qi secretly form in the rebel organization? Why is there no record of this? Bloody Dawn. Speaking of which, there was an unexpected incident at the execution ground. I was a little surprised after watching the video. It's not hard to understand why Mu Qing would betray the entire human race. The root of the disaster had already been planted. He was dumbfounded when he saw the introduction of his future. I'm a traitor to the human race? While he was in disbelief, he felt that this incident must have been caused by some forces in the dark. He was falsely accused and became a sinner despised by the world. The force behind this was most likely the Scarlet Institute. He formed the Dark Organization to fight against the Scarlet Institute. Therefore, it was very likely that he was discovered when he was carrying out a secret operation against the Scarlet Institute, causing him to lose everything. Before checking his private email, he hesitated for a moment. In the end, he clicked on the attached video button below his character introduction. As the scene of the execution ground appeared, the voice of the narrator sounded in his mind. Live streaming yourself being beheaded? Brother, you're really amazing. If it weren't for the fact that I can't send a video to the bullet screen, I would have given you a 666. Feng Qi. Chapter 56. In the video, Feng Qi saw himself standing on the huge, circular execution platform in a striped prison uniform with his hands and feet bound by black iron chains. At this time, his skin was pale and his lips were cracked as if he had not seen the sun for a long time. His hair was messy and he stood there with his head lowered. He looked very thin and down. Behind him stood a dignified man wearing the uniform of the Star City Garrison Army and holding a broadsword in his hand. This execution was broadcasted live, and everyone could watch the specific process of the execution through the internet. Moreover, this execution used the beheading that had long been abandoned by modern society. This showed the seriousness of the situation. However, this made Feng Qi very confused. A public execution was understandable. Perhaps it was to deter potential dangerous people. However, the problem was that even Mu Qing, who had slaughtered several cities, was kept secret. What did he do to deserve a public execution? He continued to watch with doubts in his heart. As time passed, the man in the military uniform behind him said, Feng Qi, do you have anything to say before you die? In the face of the question, he slowly raised his head, revealing a haggard and thin face. He opened his mouth and then said, Do you hate me? After saying this sentence, the screen was full of comments, all of which were cursing him. Even the man standing behind him could not help but say, You betrayed us. Don't you deserve to be hated? The spectators standing around the execution ground began to throw stones at him. Looking at the angry scene, he shook his head and chuckled. You can never understand the real me. If you try to walk the path I have walked, you might not even have the courage to take a step. The me you can understand is always the tip of the iceberg, and your evaluation of me can't even make up 1/10,000th of me. Feng Qi clenched his fists in front of the video as he looked at the angry comments on the bullet screen. He could imagine how painful his future self was at that moment. He had wanted to save the world without hesitation, but in the end, he had to be reviled and insulted by the world, thinking that he was a traitor who hindered the development of human civilization. He did not hate the people of the world because they were just blinded and did not know the real truth. The people's anger towards him also came from their love for this world, so he could understand their feelings. However, He could not forgive the dark forces that manipulated everything behind the scenes and played with the people of the world. At this moment, the thought of destroying the Scarlet Institute became even more urgent. In the image, after he said those words, he was escorted to the execution platform at the center of the execution platform. At this moment, there was a commotion on the screen. The military personnel surrounding the execution platform were pushed aside, and he saw a beautiful figure appear on the screen. She was wearing a black robe and had a tall figure. She walked up the execution platform step by step. Behind her, there was another black-robed figure guarding her as she advanced. Seeing this person and the emblem on his black robe, no one dared to step forward to stop him. When the black robe was lifted, he saw a familiar face. It was Mu Qing. "Feng Qi, I'll take you back. I'm a sinner now. I can't leave." In the image, he raised his head and smiled at Mu Qing. "I don't believe you. In my eyes, you love this world more than anyone else." Looking at the haggard Feng Qi, Mu Qing's eyes were wet. "Don't make mistakes. You're now the leader of a top domain battle team. You're an elite of the human race. You have a bright future. Don't be implicated by me." Mu Qing did not reply to him this time. She reached out and grabbed the metal chain. Under the huge force, the specially made black metal chain shattered and fell off inch by inch. Seeing this, the military personnel standing behind Feng Qi and holding a large sword suddenly had a change in expression. "Leader Mu, what are you doing? Is it worth it for a traitor?" Hearing this, Mu Qing suddenly stared at the military personnel. Her eyes were bloodshot. "He's not a traitor." Under Mu Qing's gaze, the military personnel was so frightened that he took a few steps back. Seeing this, the military personnel in the image quickly spoke up to stop her. "Don't be silly. This is the military. Don't be implicated by me. No one can stop me if I want to save you." Seeing that Mu Qing wanted to rob the execution ground, the military personnel in the image suddenly slapped Mu Qing's face. Amidst Mu Qing's silence, he said, "Calm down. Don't become a sinner in history like me. Do you want to watch you die?" Mu Qing's eyes were moist. She held back her grief and spoke. "Do you remember the promise we made under the willow tree? We'll fight for the future of the human race for a lifetime. Now that you've established your own domain battle team, if you kidnap me today, you'll also become a sinner in history. All your efforts will be in vain. Then do you remember that you said you'll become my vice leader?" Hearing this, the military personnel in the image was clearly stunned. Then, he shook his head and sighed. "I went back on my word. I brought enough people with me to ensure that we can leave Star City safely." Before Mu Qing could finish her words, the military personnel in the image could not help but speak angrily. "Leave? Where to? To live a life of hiding? Even if it's unbearable, you have to endure it. Remember your mission. If I fall, you have to carry on my dream. Don't let me die with regrets." Looking at the haggard but determined Feng Qi, Mu Qing was silent for a long time. Then she asked, "Do I have to die?" "I have to die." Hearing this, Mu Qing stomped her feet. Instantly, cracks began to appear on the execution platform with her as the center spreading outwards. "What if I have to save you?" The surrounding army personnel were extremely nervous at this moment. "Don't make me struggle in pain for the rest of my life. Give up." Hearing this, a tear fell from her eye. She seemed to have understood that he had already made up his mind to die. "I swear I'll investigate everything and avenge you." With that, Mu Qing turned around and left with the other black-robed figures. She did not look back. Seeing this, the military personnel in the execution ground who had been tense all this time heaved a sigh of relief. At this time, Mu Qing was already the commander of a top-level domain battle group. Even the military did not dare to have a conflict with her. In the end, they let her go. Her deterrence was obvious. After Mu Qing left, the military personnel in the image stood at the execution ground again. "Time's up. Leave your last words." "It's time to go," the military personnel standing behind him said, with a serious expression. Hearing this, the military personnel in the image nodded. Then he looked up and smiled. "If you see this scene, don't feel guilty. For me, who has failed, this is a relief. You're the one who has to carry on with this heavy burden. Don't care about the evaluation of the world. Remember, my heart and actions are as clear as a mirror. Everything I do is righteous. I have a clear conscience." As soon as he finished speaking, the large blade fell and a smear of red splattered. Accompanied by the cheers in the image, Feng Qi clenched his fist and slammed it on the control panel. "You're the one who has to carry on with this heavy burden. In the future, you chose to sacrifice yourself not only to fulfill Mu Qing, but also to fulfill yourself. Don't disappoint him. I will continue to walk down this path." "No, give up, give up." Feng Qi gritted his teeth with red eyes. Chapter 57. Seeing his future self being executed, Feng Qi's heart was in great pain. Every time he traveled to the future, it meant that he had become a victim of trial and error in a timeline and had to bear great pressure and pain. Therefore, before he died, his future self would say that death was just a release and ask him not to feel guilty. How could he not feel guilty when he saw the crowd cheering for him while his future self was lying on the execution platform with his head separated from his body? At the end of the live broadcast of the execution, a person appeared. Although his appearance had changed and there were a few more scars on his face, he could still recognize that this person was the monk. At this time, he had changed into the tattered attire of an ascetic and walked slowly to the execution platform. Then he sat cross-legged beside the monk, closed his eyes, and chanted silently, as if he was expiating the monk's soul. Although he didn't know what his relationship with the monk would be in the future of this timeline. But he didn't expect that at this time, the monk who looked very unreliable would come to send him off. During this time, the crowd threw stones at the monk, but he didn't move. His hands were clasped in front of his chest, and he kept chanting. When the military came to clear the scene, the monk reached out his hand and touched his face, closing his eyes that were still open. At the end of the video was the scene of the scene being cleaned up. At this time, a group of people in black robes came again. But this time, Mu Qing's figure was not seen. They seemed to be negotiating with the military and finally took his body away. After the video finished playing, he took a deep breath. His heart still couldn't calm down, but he knew that now wasn't the time to be sentimental. He had to cherish every minute and second he had left in the future dream. So he opened the search function and entered the monk's name, Hui Su. After filtering, the relevant information appeared. Hui Su, Master. Age, 219 years old. Character introduction. The 239th abbot of the Golden Immortal Temple, an outstanding graduate of Star City University. In his early years, he didn't do anything. In his middle years, he suddenly had an epiphany and took over the Prajna Domain Battle Group. During this period, he led the Prajna Domain Battle Group to achieve many military achievements. In his later years, he left his position as the commander and traveled the world to promote the tenacity and unyielding spirit. He awakened countless knowledgeable people to fight for the future of mankind. Netizens' comments praise the future. Actually, Master Hui Su's early life was very bumpy. In his early years, he was almost involved in Feng Qi's case, causing him to be insulted. But after looking through the historical information, I found that Master Hui Su's epiphany was directly related to Feng Qi, but I don't know the specific reason. Blade Soul Slayer. If you want to argue about Master Hui Su's change, I think it definitely has something to do with Feng Qi. This is because Master Hui Su once had the idea of leaving Buddhism, but on the day of Feng Qi's execution, he put on the clothes of an ascetic monk and completely changed. After releasing Feng Qi from purgatory, he returned to Buddhism and entered the Prajna Domain Battle Group. In the end, he relied on his own efforts to become the commander. It was very inspirational, but also very sad. He didn't seem to believe that his friend Feng Qi would betray mankind. Firm will. Master Hui Su was once Feng Qi's student. At the moment of execution, his appearance was just a student's remembrance of his teacher. I don't think it has anything to do with Feng Qi's influence on him. One was the spiritual leader of many people, the other was a traitor. What kind of relationship could there be? Fudi Shaoli. Actually, historical records can prove Master Hui Su's feelings for Feng Qi. When he was in Star City University, Master Hui Su couldn't be called a master. After he graduated, Hui Su couldn't be called a master. After that, Hui Su, who lived a dispirited life, couldn't be called a master. However, at the moment of Feng Qi's execution, Hui Su, who put on the clothes of an ascetic monk, became a true master. He completely changed. We can't understand Master Hui Su's inner world, but I know that Feng Qi's death had a great impact on him. After reading the monk's introduction, Feng Qi didn't expect that the monk, who he always thought was unreliable, would grow to become the spiritual leader of many people. As for whether the monk's change had anything to do with him, he didn't know. He didn't experience the events after this timeline. All the answers could only be found in his personal mailbox. Before this, he still had the permission to check the information of a character. Therefore, he entered Mu Qing's name into the search bar. After a few seconds, Mu Qing's information appeared. Mu Qing, leader of the rebel army. Introduction: originally a student of Star City University. After graduation, she joined the Howling Wind Domain Battle Group and became a domain warrior. Her performance was outstanding and she was constantly promoted. In just half a year, she was promoted to the position of deputy commander. The Howling Wind Domain Battle Group was promoted to a rank 8 battle group with Mu Qing's strength. In the third year after graduating from Star City University, she left the Howling Wind Domain Battle Group despite being urged to stay. She personally formed one of the 10 strongest battle groups, the Dawn Domain Battle Group. During this period, she made many contributions and was named as one of the candidates for the God of War in history. However, after Feng Qi's death, Mu Qing's personality changed greatly. She killed several famous domain battle group commanders during a domain battle group conference organized by the Scarlet Institute. After that, she recruited a large number of scavengers and formed the human rebel army Dawn. She also restarted the rune-modified human project and started a fight against the humans. Her hands were stained with the blood of many innocent people. She led the rebel army to massacre several cities. Her sins were heavy and she was hated by the future generations. Cause of death, secret, highest authority, tags, rune-modified human, leader of the Dawn Rebels, human traitor personality, cruel, cold-blooded, and scrupulous comment from the netizens. A moment of silence for the dead. Mu Qing was definitely one of the strongest combatants in the world. If she had developed according to the normal path, the young her potential for growth was huge, and she would definitely have been crowned as the war god of this world. However, because Feng Qi walked on the path of betraying all of humanity, she walked on Feng Qi's old path and became a traitor to humanity. Me alone, I really admire that piece of shit Feng Qi. He was able to influence so many people. Luckily, he died early. Otherwise, he would definitely have caused a lot of trouble. Dragon blood. Looking at the history, I feel that there are many suspicious points. Everyone said that Mu Qing betrayed the humans because of Feng Qi. However, I feel that there might be other reasons. Before the Scarlet Institute organized the Domain Battle Group Conference, Mu Qing only wanted to prove that Feng Qi was not wrong. However, in terms of actions, she still walked on the front lines of the fight against the domain invasion. The betrayal came very suddenly. There are many suspicious points. After reading the future people's evaluation of Mu Qing, Feng Qi couldn't help but sigh. In the future, he would rather die than let Mu Qing save him because he felt that this was the closest Mu Qing was to being changed. He thought that Mu Qing, who is already the leader of the Dawn Territory Battle Group, would embark on the path of helping the human civilization rise in the future. He didn't expect that she would eventually walk on the old path. And this time, Mu Qing betrayed the humans, and the Scarlet Institute was also behind it. He couldn't help but suspect that perhaps the Scarlet Institute was behind Mu Qing's betrayal. But when he thought about it carefully, it didn't make sense. If Mu Qing was the Scarlet Institute's secret weapon against the humans, why didn't they keep her in the Scarlet Institute? Why did they give her freedom? All the reasons seemed to be related to that conference. With doubts, he opened the search list and began to search for information related to the conference. Chapter 58. The information he found made Feng Qi even more confused about the reason behind Mu Qing's betrayal. The Scarlet Institute held a meeting for the domain battle groups. Many domain battle groups commanders participated, so this information wasn't kept confidential. However, there were no videos, only written records. According to the information, the main topic of the meeting was how to effectively dispel the domain field. Everything was normal during the meeting. Mu Qing also expressed her views on dispelling the domain field during the meeting. However, just as the meeting was about to end, Mu Qing suddenly went on a rampage and killed several domain battle group's commanders. Then, when she was besieged by the domain battle group's commanders, Mu Qing killed several more of them before calmly retreating. After that, Mu Qing's path returned to the path of becoming the great demon queen. First, she recruited scavengers, then she formed the Dawn Rebels, and finally, she massacred cities and became the great demon queen that was despised by future generations. After reading this information, Feng Qi felt that there were many suspicious points. If Mu Qing was controlled by the Scarlet Institute during this meeting and became their secret weapon against humanity, it didn't make sense. A meticulous plan wouldn't allow any uncertainties to exist. If Mu Qing was the Scarlet Institute's secret weapon, the Scarlet Institute should have controlled Mu Qing instead of giving her freedom and creating potential uncontrollable risks. However, if Mu Qing wasn't controlled by the Scarlet Institute and only betrayed humanity after discovering the Scarlet Institute's secret during the meeting, this couldn't explain Mu Qing's subsequent actions. Since she discovered the Scarlet Institute's secret, why did she kill the domain battle group's commanders instead of directly attacking the Scarlet Institute? From his understanding of Mu Qing, she also hoped for humanity to obtain the final victory. If she wasn't controlled, why would she massacre the cities? Unless the massacre was fake. Thinking up to this point, a terrifying guess appeared in his mind. Perhaps Mu Qing had never betrayed humanity from the beginning to the end. Instead, she discovered that there were many organizations similar to the Scarlet Research Institute in human society, so she organized a force to eliminate them. History was deceiving. Just like how he became a traitor to humanity in the future, it was possible that Mu Qing's betrayal of humanity was also distorted. It was actually very easy to distort history. You didn't even need to distort what happened. Just like how humans harvested honey from bees, there were many ways to express it. Humans cultivated honey and then harvested it. Humans enslaved bees. Bees' selfless contribution. Each expression had a completely different meaning, but they were all describing the same thing. Mu Qing's act of massacring the entire city could also be misinterpreted into many different meanings. However, after looking through the relevant information, he found the Scarlet Institute's statement. The problem came back to square one. Since Mu Qing established the rebel army to eliminate the Scarlet Institute, why didn't the database record Mu Qing's attack on the Scarlet Institute? If Mu Qing wanted to eliminate a tumor, then the Scarlet Institute should be the first target. Could it be that Star City was heavily guarded, so the rebel army couldn't break in? Thinking up to this point, Feng Qi immediately shook his head. Because the Scarlet Institute wasn't only located in Star City. There were branches of the Scarlet Institute in many other cities. However, none of these branches were attacked by the Dawn Rebels. This meant that Mu Qing wasn't hostile to the Scarlet Institute. None of the answers were correct. If Mu Qing was controlled by the Scarlet Institute, why was she always free? If Mu Qing wasn't controlled, why did she betray humanity? Assuming that Mu Qing discovered the secret of the Scarlet Research Institute and formed a rebel army to massacre the city, she was actually trying to get rid of the cancer hidden in human society. Then, why didn't she do anything to the Scarlet Research Institute? All the answers seemed to point to Mu Qing's betrayal of humanity. However, Feng Qi felt that this answer wasn't the truth. She had no reason to betray humanity. If Mu Qing betrayed humanity because of him, then it was a violation of their agreement. If it was really a violation of the agreement, then the first target would still be the Scarlet Institute. He felt that the reason for his death was the Scarlet Institute's doing. If Mu Qing betrayed humanity for him, then she would definitely investigate the Scarlet Institute. Therefore, the first target would still be the Scarlet Institute. How could she not care about it? None of the four answers made sense, and each of them had their own loopholes. Time was limited. Since he couldn't figure out the reason, he could only give up for now. Next, he entered the password for his personal email in the database. Suddenly, The email page popped up. After entering the 12-digit password, the email opened and a message appeared on the screen. The future him left many messages, many of which were complaining about the trivial matters of life. Life is getting harder and harder. Although the tiger fist and other techniques can be taught repeatedly, it's not a solution. It's too hard to be a teacher. I've decided I'll start learning by myself. There's no problem that can stop me. Every day is very fulfilling, but I haven't forgotten about secretly forming an organization to fight against the Scarlet Institute. I've already started the plan. My students have strong backgrounds. If I can pull them into the organization, they'll definitely be of help in the fight against the Scarlet Institute in the future. However, I have to make sure that they're worthy of my trust. Among the students, the one that gives me the most headaches is the monk. He's very unreliable. Others are here to learn, but he's here to eat and die. I have to change him. Lao Wang said that I can't give up on any of my students. Time was limited. Feng Qi skimmed through the unimportant messages. I've decided to let Mu Qing and Lin Ran go. I once wanted to pull them into the organization, but reality has proven that I can no longer help them grow. Staying by my side will only limit their potential. However, I'll keep an eye on them as long as I'm still alive. The organization has been secretly formed. Including me, there's a total of 11 people. The monk left after graduation. The rest of the members are your students. They passed my test and can be used by the organization. We've already started an investigation on the Scarlet Institute. However, I'll remember that safety is the most important thing. I can't take any more risks. Mu Qing has formed the Dawn Battle Group. I'm going to celebrate with her. The Mu Qing in this timeline has completely changed. She won't walk the same path. During the celebration party, Lin Ran, Lao Wang, and other friends will be there. I'm in a good mood today. The party is over. I drank so much that I vomited. During the party, Mu Qing invited me to join the Dawn Battle Group. I rejected her because I have more important things to do. Now that Mu Qing has a better future and has completely changed, I didn't choose to pull her into the organization. I'm afraid that she'll walk the same path. All right, during the party, I talked to Lin Ran for a long time. He promised me that he won't touch martial arts anymore. However, I know that he only agreed on the surface. Lin Ran made me understand one thing. No one's advice can make people realize their mistakes. The only things that can make people wake up from their dreams are experiences, losses, regrets, and injuries. Of course, if it weren't for the fact that I can't beat him, I would have beaten that bastard to death. If I can solve it with violence, why waste my breath? Chapter 59. The email contained a detailed record of how he established an organization to fight against the Scarlet Institute in the future, as well as the growth of Mu Qing and Lin Ran. Everything was fine in the early stages. They would meet up from time to time and tell each other about their experiences. Other than Lin Ran, who was still stubbornly trying to research techniques, Mu Qing seemed to have been completely changed. The Dawn rebels that should have appeared had become the Dawn Field Army that fought against the domain invasion. Mu Qing also grew rapidly through the battles against the domain invasion. In a short time, she managed to recruit a large number of powerful people to join the Dawn Field Army. They were willing to follow Mu Qing and push the Dawn Field Army to the position of the top 10 strongest field army. Due to his supervision, Lin Ran didn't give up on studying techniques and changed his focus to studying martial arts. He was still the most outstanding technique researcher in the Tiger Soul Institute. Everything seemed to be going in a good direction, but the situation changed in the following content. The contents of the private email made Feng Qi realize that the situation was getting out of control. It's hard to investigate the Scarlet Institute. Their security measures are too good. Even though my students have a strong background, they still can't get in touch with the secrets of the Scarlet Institute through their connections. So, I'm wondering if I should arrange for one of my students to take the Scarlet Institute's assessment and become an employee. But the problem is that none of my students are interested in biological sciences. They don't know anything about it. It's so uncomfortable. The information I received recently surprised me. Do you remember the name list in the Scarlet Institute? According to the name list, I try to protect the geniuses who might be assassinated, but I found out that there was already a force protecting them in the dark. The situation is like this. I arranged for the strongest student, Lu Yu, to be in charge of protecting the people on the list. However, Lu Yu, who was out on a mission, sent back a message saying that he found a mysterious person protecting the geniuses on the list when they were being assassinated. He almost thought that Lu Yu was an assassin and clashed with him. At the same time, I can confirm that the ones who came to assassinate the human geniuses were all domain transcendental life forms. Since they were able to obtain the list of human geniuses, it's obvious that they have a spy. This makes me even more certain that the Scarlet Institute is secretly colluding with domain transcendental life forms. There's one more thing that puzzles me. Which organization has the list of geniuses and is secretly protecting these geniuses who might be assassinated? To be able to compile a list of all the geniuses in the world, it's definitely not a small organization. It must be a special organization similar to the Scarlet Institute. I hope to cooperate with them. I've decided to let my student, Jia Yi, start learning about biological sciences. I hope he won't disappoint me. With his learning ability, if he works hard, it won't take long for him to master this field and sneak into the Scarlet Institute. Jia Yi has passed 2 rounds of the Scarlet Institute's assessment. He's about to sneak into the Scarlet Institute and begin his undercover plan. Hopefully, he'll be able to get some useful information this time. Today, I received a message from Mo Fei. He told me that the Science and Technology Research Institute has made some initial progress in the research of psionic technology. However, due to the instability of the final product, it's still far from being ready for production. This is undoubtedly good news. But thinking about it carefully, I haven't done anything. Why would there be such a huge change in technology? Could it be that psionic technology will appear 1,500 years later? It's a pity that I won't be able to see it, but you'll definitely be able to. Jia Yi has already sneaked into the Scarlet Institute. I'll be waiting for the good news from him. Jia Yi's clearance level in the Scarlet Institute is too low. He won't be able to access confidential information at all. However, I don't dare to take the risk of letting him bring in a hidden reconnaissance robot. This might harm him. Let's prioritize safety first. As long as he's alive, there's hope for everything. Let's slowly get promoted and grow. Do you think it's possible that the Scarlet Institute isn't the only place that's been infiltrated by a transcendent being? There are many other organizations similar to the Scarlet Institute as well. If that's really the case, just thinking about it makes me shudder. I just received a piece of good news. The Scarlet Institute has recently set up an area outside Star City as a new experimental base. A batch of equipment has already been moved there, and there's still a bunch of equipment waiting to be moved there. Right now, the security measures are still in the preparation stage. I think we should take this opportunity to wreak havoc. It's really strange. We haven't even started our operation yet, but the Scarlet Institute's external base suddenly exploded. The entire base, along with everyone inside, died. This is really good news, but I can't help but feel that something is wrong. News from Jia Yi. The Scarlet Institute has recently made a big move. They've decided to restart the Rune Transformation Project and set the new planned base outside Winter City. My goodness, do you know what happened? The newly built Scarlet Institute base outside Winter City was ambushed again. There was a violent explosion, and everyone was killed. No one was spared. I now seriously suspect that there's a secret organization targeting the Scarlet Institute. It's very likely that this organization is secretly protecting the human geniuses. However, I'm puzzled. Why is this organization's information exactly the same as mine? At first, I suspected Mu Qing, but I've never exchanged any information with her. When I asked Mu Qing later, she was also very puzzled. She even asked me what happened. Obviously, this has nothing to do with her. No, I have to find out which organization has the same idea as me. Maybe we can join forces to fight the Scarlet Institute, red symbol. I'm done for. I'm currently under investigation by the Star City Garrison. They suspect that I'm secretly plotting a rebellion. Fortunately, things are still under control. Lao Wang, Lin Ran, Mu Qing, and the others came to protect me. I'm out again. Something's wrong. Lu Yu, who is protecting the human geniuses, has been arrested. He's also accused of plotting a rebellion. After Lu Yu was arrested, the organization's member, Yang Xiaoxin, was also arrested for the same reason. Our secret operations are only known to the people within the organization. How they leak out. Today, I'm under investigation again. The situation is very unfavorable for us. Now, every message I leave could be my last. Before that, I have to find out what's going on and why our operations are leaked. After some analysis, I've confirmed one thing. All the problems started when we started to investigate which organization is secretly opposing the Scarlet Institute. Then, the organization started to encounter a series of situations. However, I don't understand why this organization is targeting us. The garrison is on their way to arrest me. The public is speculating that I'm a traitor. I thought that every step I took was stable, but I didn't expect to fail. If I'm not wrong, the organization has already been infiltrated. I don't have time to investigate who the traitor is, but you have to be careful. There are 11 people in Combat Class 3. One of them might already be a member of the mysterious organization before enrolling. When you go back, don't easily reveal your thoughts. Red symbol. Chapter 60. Looking at the last message in his mailbox, Feng Qi felt a chill run down his spine. He didn't expect the organization to disintegrate from the inside. No wonder his future self was always wondering why the mysterious organization was able to obtain the same information as him. In fact, this mysterious organization had always been stealing information from his organization. But the question was, why did this mysterious organization do this to him? From the information he obtained, this mysterious organization should be on the side of humanity. They used the organization's information to destroy the Scarlet Institute's external base several times. At the same time, they also had the list of geniuses and secretly protected them. These actions proved that this mysterious organization had the same goal as him. But reality proved that he was wrong. After this organization realized that they were being investigated, they decisively sent him to the guillotine. Previously, he thought that the disintegration of his organization and the false accusation of being a traitor was the doing of the Scarlet Institute. But the message in his mailbox proved that it was related to this mysterious organization. So, what kind of enmity did this mysterious organization have with him? Thinking of this, a terrifying conjecture appeared in his mind. His heart couldn't help but tremble. If the Scarlet Institute was the organization that secretly protected the geniuses, and the other mysterious organization was the one that hunted the geniuses, this would explain why the Scarlet Institute had the list of geniuses. It would also explain why Mu Qing didn't do anything to the Scarlet Institute after betraying humanity. If that was the case, then the real evil was the mysterious organization he was planning to investigate. They obtained the information about the Scarlet Institute from the spies they planted in the organization and started a series of sabotage operations against the Scarlet Institute. And when they realized that his future self was investigating them, they immediately decided to abandon him, a chess piece that had always been under their control. Taking a deep breath, he tried to calm himself down. If this was the truth, then he was wrong from the start. But there were also logical loopholes behind this reasoning. For example, how could he explain the existence of a domain transcendence expert in the Scarlet Institute? This was something that couldn't be cleared no matter what. Humans and domain transcendence were mortal enemies. Only one of them could exist, because the world they lived in had to be covered by domain fields, or the domain fields would be dispelled and the world would return to normal. There were no other options. The root of the problem was that it was impossible for domain transcendence to coexist harmoniously with humans. It seemed that every speculation could be the truth, but there were logical loopholes behind every speculation, and the inexplicable blanks in the middle could not be filled. Perhaps the Scarlet Institute and the mysterious organization were both potential antagonists. It was only due to their different standpoints that they viewed each other as enemies. After all, there is a hostile relationship between domain creatures. All the domains were expanding, and in order to successfully cover the entire world, in addition to defeating the humans, they also had to defeat the creatures in the other domains. Just as Feng Qi was thinking hard, the voice of the narrator appeared. Ding! Respected host, the enemy will arrive in 30 minutes. Please be prepared to run. Feng Qi was speechless. Realizing that Xiao He was on the way, he did not hesitate and immediately walked toward the metal tunnel. For the time being, he had no way of knowing the answer to this question. However, as long as he could continue to enter the future dream, he would eventually be able to obtain the truth one day. If one time didn't work, he would try 10 times. If 10 times still didn't work, he would try 100 times. He could also change the way he investigated the future. If the normal investigation did not work, then he would not do anything until the moment Mu-Ching changed. Or rather, he could simply betray them and infiltrate the enemy's organization to investigate the situation from the inside. As long as he could continue to enter the future dream, there was no problem that could not be solved. As long as he was alive, everything was possible. After leaving the metal tunnel and arriving in the outside world, he decided to start becoming stronger. Sometimes, strength could also solve all problems. Fists were the answer. Walking among the piles of bones, he punched the living dead and kicked the death worms. Along the way, he violently pushed forward and continuously absorbed vitality points. The muscle lines on the surface of his body became clearer and nerve fibers grew. He was one step closer to becoming a human. Lifting a death worm with one hand and slamming it heavily on the ground, Feng Qi panted. "Narrator, give me an idea. How can I maximize my survival time without being able to subdue Xiao He?" "I think you should go get your Sky Piercer first." "Sky Piercer?" Feng Qi was stunned. "Oh, that's a new name I came up with for the suction cup. After all, it's your weapon. Calling a suction cup weakens the aura by half. Sky Piercer is different. When you fight, you can shout, 'Get my Sky Piercer.' How imposing." Feng Qi was speechless. "You're so dramatic. Living is to be good at discovering joy and finding joy in suffering. After all, I see a fool like you every day when I open my eyes. If I'm not optimistic, what if I have a mental breakdown? Come out and fight one-on-one." The veins on Feng Qi's forehead throbbed. Noticing that the narrator was no longer moving, he grabbed the death worm beside his feet in annoyance. Then, he threw the death worm at the zombie who was standing in a daze in the distance, smashing it to the ground. Still not satisfied, he went up and kicked it a few more times. After venting, he continued to head east, preparing to get the Sky Piercer, to get the suction cup. When he walked into the city ruins, he became vigilant. This was because the further east he went, the higher the chances of encountering domain creatures. At this moment, he had the thought of hunting domain creatures to obtain power and become stronger. However, when he thought of the fact that he still had one more time to check the cultivation technique, he didn't dare to take the risk again. Before he used up all his privileges, he felt that he had to live. He couldn't die so easily. Stepping into the city ruins, he walked quickly in the direction of the abandoned district in his memory. As he moved forward, he kept looking around to prevent danger from suddenly descending. After walking for about an hour and a half, he finally saw the abandoned district covered in weeds in the distance. Walking into the district, he was about to go upstairs when he suddenly realized that there was a leopard-like creature with a blue body lying at the stairs. It seemed to be made of energy, and its body was emitting a faint blue light. At this moment, the domain creature lying at the stairs opened its eyes and looked at him with its icy blue vertical pupils. As their gazes met, Feng Qi opened his mouth, then turned around and ran. At the same time, he shouted, "Suction cup, help!" This domain creature was also frightened by Feng Qi's shout. Then, it stood up abruptly and pounced at Feng Qi at an extremely fast speed. Its sharp claws instantly closed in on Feng Qi's back, slapping him heavily to the ground. However, just as Feng Qi thought that he was about to die, a thin and small figure jumped down from the sky and smashed a fist into the head of the domain creature behind him. The head of the leopard-like domain creature came into contact with the ground under the immense pressure. Dense cracks spread out in all directions with its head as the center. Turning his head, he saw that the domain creature's pupils gradually turned from ice-cold blue to white. Boom! As the ground trembled, the voice of the narrator sounded in his mind. The ground rumbled. The suction-type automatic defense weapon, Violent Suction Cup, appeared. Chapter 61. Keep it alive, don't beat it to death. Hearing Feng Chi's shout, the sucker ignored him. Starlight flowed in her eyes as she raised her white arm and smashed it down at an extremely fast speed. Boom! The ground trembled. The leopard's head was twisted, and the blue light in its eyes gradually dissipated. Seeing this scene, Feng Chi's expression instantly darkened. He had wanted to finish off the beast at the last moment. Perhaps killing this domain creature would allow him to obtain a good prefix title ability. Unfortunately, he could not communicate with the sucker. Under her violent destruction, the domain creature died after a few punches. What kind of trash game is this? Don't you share the experience in team mode? You didn't even leave a sip of soup. Feng Chi was speechless. Knowing that the narrator was complaining, he turned to look at the sucker who was squatting on the ground on all fours. The sucker also looked up at him at this moment. After a short exchange of glances, the sucker suddenly jumped up and attached itself to his chest. Feng Chi was speechless. Weapon-equipped, electronically synthesized voice. The narrator jumped out at the right time to remind him. Looking at the sucker who was hugging him like an octopus with its eyes closed, he finally felt a sense of security. Although the sucker was not a match for Xiaohei, with her around, he did not need to be afraid of ordinary domain creatures. At this moment, an idea appeared in his mind. Could he use the sucker to hunt domain creatures and obtain more prefix title abilities? Thinking of this, he immediately walked out of the nearby abandoned district and began to search for domain creatures that he could hunt. His mentality also changed at this moment. Previously, he had to avoid domain creatures, but now that he had a throwing weapon, his combat strength had soared. As long as it was not Xiaohei, there was nothing to be afraid of. Your combat strength is 1, and the sucker's combat strength is 99. Added together, it's 100. So you think your combat strength has soared? You don't even care about your face anymore. This is called riding on someone's coattails. Don't link it to your own combat strength. Feng Chi was speechless. Shut up. Okay. Walking along the cracked and overgrown road, his gaze stopped on a tall building in the distance. Before hunting domain creatures, he had to confirm Xiaohei's current location. Otherwise, something would happen if Xiaohei arrived during the hunt. The suction cup was a throw-type weapon that could be recycled and reused. After encountering Xiaohei, it would become a single-use weapon. Climbing up the 19-story building, he looked to the west. As his gaze, he saw Xiaohei, who was quickly approaching from afar, shrouded in black fog. With Xiaohei's current speed, it was only about 10 minutes at most. Realizing the urgency of the situation, Feng Chi suddenly had an idea. I have to find an opponent. It's as if he ran now. With his speed, he would definitely be caught by Blackie. There would be no way to escape. The safest way was to find an opponent for Little Black to slow it down. After entering the future dream a few times, he discovered something strange. All domain creatures seemed to be very hostile towards Xiaohei after coming into contact with Xiaohei. They would decisively give up on him and attack Xiaohei instead. This was completely different from the sucker. When he was hiding in the abandoned neighborhood, he was attacked by a vicious dog. Faced with the sucker, the dog still chose to attack him first. However, he had no way of knowing the exact reason. This characteristic of Xiaohei was a good thing for him. Thinking of this, he looked around and began to find an opponent for Xiaohei. As he looked around, he noticed a blood red eye floating not far to the east of the tall building. He was very familiar with this blood red eye. Its combat strength was extremely strong. It had the powerful ability to control objects with telekinesis. If Xiaohei had not arrived, he would have been crushed to death by the blood red eye's telekinesis. You're the one. After locking onto his target, he quickly climbed down the tall building and ran toward where the blood red eye was. After going around a street full of building debris, he slowed down and looked around the corner. He saw the blood red eye floating in the air not far away with its tentacles dancing around it. As he waited, Xiaohei's figure appeared behind him. Realizing that the time was right, he walked toward the blood red eye decisively. His blood red eyes, which had been in a deep sleep, suddenly opened at this moment. He glanced at Feng Chi, then quickly locked on a Xiaohei, who was quickly approaching from behind him. The ground trembled, and the surrounding rocks slowly floated into the air and circled around the blood-red eye. Looking at Xiao Hei, who was coming closer, it was very cautious. Then, the rocks that were circling around its body shot toward Xiao Hei like raindrops. Seeing the rocks shooting toward him, Feng Qi jumped to the right without hesitation. However, he was still hit by a few rocks, and the pain made him grimace. He realized that it was not a good thing to have nerve fibers growing in his body because it hurt. Since he already had an escape plan in mind, he quickly stood up after falling to the ground and ran away without caring about the battle behind him. The road behind him was blocked, so he could only go back the way he came last time. Since Xiao Hei was being held back by the blood-red eye, the most important thing now was to go back and look at the information, methods, and record down any useful information. At the same time, he wanted to find out where the sucker came from. Although the environment had changed, he still remembered the general route since he had a good memory. On the way back to the Star City Sanctuary, there were more weeds and fewer tall buildings along the way. Once again, in that familiar area, the sleeping suckers suddenly fell from his body. Then, they quickly knelt down in a muddy area, and a hint of sadness appeared in their hollow eyes. Feng Qi was confused. He was confused. Why would the sucker enter such a state every time it came here? He looked at the ground in front of him carefully and found that there was nothing special about it. Could there be something under the ground? Curious, he walked to the pile of dirt and stuck his bony arm into the ground and started digging. While he was digging, he looked at the sucker subconsciously. He realized that the sucker was still in a sad state and ignored him, which made him even more reckless. After digging for more than a meter, he still did not find anything. However, just as he was about to give up, his hand suddenly touched a hard object. Using both hands, he slowly pulled the object out of the pit. It was a square metal box. It was rusty, and the words carved on it could no longer be seen. There was a lock in the middle of the metal box that seemed to be able to be opened. Because it was already rusty, he simply broke the lock and slowly opened the metal box with anticipation. However, when he saw what was inside, he was dumbfounded. There was a pile of moldy green powder inside. What is this? Just as he was puzzled, he suddenly looked at his feet and found that half of a silver-white object was exposed where the metal box was originally buried. I think I've seen this somewhere before. As he looked at it, he suddenly remembered what it was. Ha ha, brother. You're getting more and more awesome. First, you saw yourself being beheaded, then you dug out your own urn. I can't take it anymore. I think I'll be laughed to death by you sooner or later, haha. Chapter 62. Feng Qi was dumbfounded as he pulled the silver-white object out of the soil and examined it carefully. He was now certain that this familiar-looking harmonica was the one he bought for Mu Qing. Since the harmonica was made of special materials in the territory, it didn't decay even after 1,500 years. It was just that the surface had lost its luster and looked a little dull. He looked down at the metal box placed on the side, and then at the silver-white harmonica buried together with the box. The identity of the owner of the box was obvious. If he guessed correctly, this was his future cremation box. His expression gradually became sluggish. He even wanted to applaud himself. His actions made his scalp tingle. Your future self is so pitiful. In order to fulfill your wish, she endured tremendous pressure and pain. She was even despised by the world. In the end, she was publicly executed. In the end, she was dug out by you. Look at the moldy green ashes. How pitiful. Feng Qi was speechless. I didn't do it on purpose, he explained in a low voice. Saying that you didn't do it on purpose will solve the problem? Shouldn't you kneel down and kowtow to your future self to apologize? Feng Qi was speechless. While the veins on his forehead were throbbing, he connected the dots in his mind. At that time, in the execution scene, there was a piece of content. A group of members of the Dawn domain finally negotiated with the military personnel and took away his corpse. In other words, his body was in the hands of Mu Qing. He didn't need to think to know what happened next. Because his body was separated from his body, Mu Qing cremated his body and buried it here in a metal box. She also buried the silver-white harmonica he gave her. Thinking of this, he suddenly turned his head to look at Suction Cup. So, Why is she kneeling in front of my grave and crying? Under his gaze, Suction Cup suddenly stood up and went into the nearby weeds. After a while, she reappeared from the weeds with a white flower in her mouth. Suction Cup came to the soil and stuck the flower in her mouth into the soil. Then a tear fell from her eyes. Is she paying tribute to me? She clearly lost her ability to think, but she still remembered to bring flowers to see you. This means that she has done this more than once. It has even become muscle memory. So is she Mu Qing? Feng Qi was speechless. From her appearance, he suddenly felt that Suction Cup looked very similar to Mu Qing when she was young. However, her hair had turned white. Although there were stars flowing in her eyes, they looked very empty. This also explained why Suction Cup was so attached to him, because he was Mu Qing's only friend. After his death, Mu Qing would definitely bring flowers to visit him every year, so the narrator's guess was completely reasonable. But after thinking about it, he shook his head again. This was because the physical characteristics of a sucker were completely different from humans. The most obvious characteristic was that she had no fangs or seams. Mu Qing was transformed by runes, but she was still a human. She should have all the physical characteristics of a human. How do you know? You only took a look at Suction Cup. Did you also take a look at Mu Qing's body? Feng Qi was speechless. I've looked up information about rune transformation humans. The transformation process of rune transformation humans is just to implant a domain creature's rune crystal into the body of the subject. Then, a crystal that absorbs spirit energy is left outside the body. It doesn't completely transform the human body into an inhuman state, he explained a little angrily. Oh, so, can you prove that she's definitely not Mu Qing? Don't forget that the cause of Mu Qing's death is confidential. After hearing the narrator's explanation, he felt that it made sense. But for some reason, he still felt that Suction Cup couldn't be Mu Qing. The future dream was a world 1,500 years in the future. If Mu Qing could live until now, how old would she be? Even if a cultivator's lifespan could be extended as their strength increased, Mu Qing wouldn't be able to live until now because she was recognized by humans as the Great Demon King. The entire human society needed her death to appease their emotions. During that dark period created by Mu Qing, several cities were destroyed. Whether she was trying to remove the cancer hidden in human civilization or not, countless innocent people must have died in her hands. When a city was destroyed, the huge number of refugees was simply not something that other cities could accept. Therefore, after the city was destroyed, there was only one path for the residents to take: become scavengers. Putting aside Mu Qing's real purpose for destroying the world, the fact that she committed murder couldn't be washed away. Everyone in the world could bear witness. What was true couldn't be false, and what was false couldn't be true. The sacrifice of a large number of innocent people was definitely a fact. Therefore, Mu Qing should be dead. When he thought of this, a conspiracy theory couldn't help but appear in his mind. Was there a possibility that Mu Qing wasn't really dead, but was secretly imprisoned? And the mysterious organization that imprisoned her had carried out a series of human transformation experiments on her, finally turning her into her current appearance and living until now. But questions came one after another. Why did they transform Mu Qing into her current appearance? The human civilization had already perished, so why was the transformed Mu Qing still living in Star City, covered by the domain? These questions couldn't be connected at all. If he wanted to get the answer to this question, it was very simple. He needed to return to Star City Sanctuary and look for news after Mu Qing's death. Although the method of Mu Qing's death was kept secret, there would definitely be news after her death to appease the public. Therefore, as long as he could find the corresponding information, he would be able to determine whether the sucker was Mu Qing or not. Looking at the sucker that was still crying silently, he didn't feel good. After closing the urn and burying it underground, he walked in front of the sucker and squatted down. "Sucker, let's go, I'm still alive." The sucker ignored him and continued to stare at the place where the urn was originally placed with empty eyes. Seeing that the sucker didn't respond, he put the silver-white harmonica in front of the sucker. "Do you want it?" Seeing the silver-white harmonica, the sucker's empty eyes lit up, and she actually reached out her small hand to take the harmonica. Seeing this, Feng-Chi was also a little surprised. Time was limited, and the most important thing now was to return to Star City Sanctuary. Therefore, he didn't waste any more time and picked up the sucker from the ground and carried her on his shoulder. As he walked towards Star City Sanctuary, the sucker sitting on his shoulder suddenly played the harmonica. The sound of the harmonica was intermittent and seemed very unfamiliar, but she soon became familiar with it. The wind was cold, and the sound of the harmonica was melodious. He could even hear the emotions of longing in the melody. Looking at the lifeless narrator, he didn't feel good. Even when she lost consciousness, she still remembered to lay flowers at his grave and could even recognize him in his living dead state. Was she really Mu-Ching? Chapter 63. He walked west along the outer ring of the city ruins. Compared to the dilapidated scene inside the city, there were all kinds of strange plants growing around the city. At this time, the suction cup was holding the silver-white harmonica with one hand. It closed its eyes and sucked on Feng-Chi's chest as if it had fallen into a deep sleep. With the suction cup, he felt a sense of security on the way to the Star City Sanctuary. Although the suction cup would not take the initiative to attack, as long as he was in danger, the suction cup would definitely protect him. At this time, he was not even worried about encountering domain creatures on the way to the underground sanctuary. He even hoped that domain creatures would take the initiative to provoke him and then be beaten up by the suction cup. If possible, he also hoped that the suction cup would leave a breath while beating up the domain creatures so that he could finish them off. After entering the future dream several times, he was already certain of one thing. He would obtain the special ability of the domain creatures he killed after killing them. For example, when he killed the zombie, his body's strength would be increased. When he killed the death worm, he obtained the prefix toughness, which increased the toughness of his muscles. When he killed the nightmare, he obtained the ability to enter the target's subconscious under certain conditions and read the target's memories. What was certain was that if he could kill the blood-red eye, he would definitely be able to obtain its psychokinesis. At that time, he would definitely be able to use his psychokinesis to control objects. He could even wrap his body with psychokinesis and fly. The increase in his strength from killing domain creatures was very significant. Therefore, he had always been looking forward to hunting domain creatures and obtaining special prefix titles. The more prefix titles he had, the more special abilities he would have. The higher the prefix title level, the stronger his ability would be. Unfortunately, with his current ability, it was not enough to hunt domain creatures. Other than the Nightmare, who had the ability to hypnotize but had a very weak physique, the other domain creatures he encountered were all terrifyingly strong and could easily kill him. He only had the ability to easily defeat domain creatures like the zombie and the death worm that did not have rune crystals on the surface of their bodies. But the situation was different now. With the suction cup, it was equivalent to having a personal bodyguard. If he did not provoke domain creatures, he felt that it was a waste of the suction cup's ability. So, as he moved forward, he would howl from time to time in an attempt to attract nearby domain creatures. This method was indeed effective. After walking for a short while, the grass in front of him began to sway, as if some kind of creature was rapidly approaching. With his vision blocked, the swaying of the weeds gave him a strong sense of oppression. He decisively took a few steps back and hugged the suction cup tightly. As the weeds in front of him swayed and tilted to the sides, a huge, pitch-black spider suddenly appeared. Its appearance was extremely ferocious. There was a dark green rune crystal embedded in its forehead, and its 8 legs were full of hooks. There was also a human face wriggling on its abdomen. Noticing Feng-Chi, the spider's abdomen wriggled, and its ghastly face split open. Black spider silk as thick as a pinky finger shot out from within and coiled towards him. A sinister gust of wind blew against his face, and the suction cup suddenly opened its eyes. Starlight swirled in his originally grayish-white eyes, as if the Milky Way was rotating. Countless resplendent lights burst forth from within. She jumped out of Feng-Chi's arms, and the recoil knocked him to the ground. Then, She grabbed the spider silk that was shooting at her. After her body landed on the ground, she suddenly unleashed her tremendous strength. No matter how the demonic spider struggled, its body could not stop moving towards the suction cup. Its 8 legs left marks on the ground as it swung. As the demonic spider approached, the suction cup suddenly let go of the spider silk in her hands. Her body suddenly leaped up, and her white right arm smashed down on the demonic spider's head like a mountain-splitting axe. This punch landed on the demonic spider's head. Its body suddenly sank, and its body landed heavily on the ground. Its bulging abdomen was squeezed under the tremendous force, and a ball of green liquid spurted out. The green liquid made a sizzling sound when it came into contact with the nearby plants, and the plants were instantly melted. Clearly, it was extremely corrosive. Some of the liquid also splashed onto the suction cup's body. Seeing this, Feng Qi was originally a little worried. He did not expect a ball of crystal-clear, jade-colored air to appear on the surface of the suction cup's body. As it flowed, the green liquid that stuck to its body slid off without causing any damage. Seeing this, he could not help but exclaim, "Awesome!" Seeing this, he could not help but exclaim, "Yeah, look at how powerful the suction cup is. What else can you do other than beating up the living dead with your bone club? I can also beat up the death worms." Ite. Looking at the suction cup and the demonic spider again, he realized that the demonic spider could no longer stand up after being hit by this punch. Seeing the suction cup raise its fist again, he could not help but shout, "Suction cup, keep it alive for me." As he said that, he ran towards the demonic spider, wanting to finish off the last hit. However, the suction cup did not care. The second punch landed abruptly, and the fist instantly pierced through the demonic spider's head. Its 8 legs struggled for a while before they stopped moving. Coming to the suction cup, he looked at the lifeless demonic spider and fell helpless. In the end, he still could not finish off the last hit and obtain the demonic spider's special ability. Aside, if I kill the demonic spider, what kind of ability would I get? While feeling regretful, he could not help but ask, "I'm not sure. Maybe it's the ability to shoot spider silk from your wrist. This ability is more practical in tall buildings in the city. If there are no tall buildings, your combat ability might be greatly reduced." Feng Qi was speechless. Hearing the aside's serious sarcasm, the veins on his forehead throbbed. Now that the battle was over, he was ready to continue on his journey with the suction cup. Looking down, he suddenly realized that the suction cup was eating the demonic spider's body. As the suction cup ate, the jade-like color on the surface of her body flowed, and the shattered rune crystal on her left arm also started to glow. This scene reminded him of Mu Qing. Mu Qing did the same when she ate. The rune crystal on her left arm would glow as she absorbed energy. When they first met at the Shuifu restaurant, he stared at her curiously for a long time, which made Mu Qing wary. Although the suction cup's body was small, like that of a 2- or 3-year-old child, the speed at which it ate was strange. In the blink of an eye, it swallowed the demonic spider, leaving only a dark green rune crystal. He reached out and picked up the dark green rune crystal from the ground. He could not help but have a guess. Since he could kill domain creatures and absorb their abilities, could he also absorb abilities from the rune crystal that was the core of the domain creature's power? Curious, he threw the dark green rune crystal into his mouth. After chewing and swallowing, the dark green crystal shards fell from his abdomen. A gust of wind blew, stirring up dark green mist. When it comes to embarrassing yourself, you will never let me down. I have to salute you with my fists and say, respect. Feng Qi was speechless. He lowered his head to look at his mutilated body. His expression was very awkward. Chapter 64. After taking a detour to the north, Feng Qi finally left the ruins of the city and returned to the Star City underground shelter. At this time, the sucker was lying on his chest and had fallen asleep. Looking at the screen that was still open, he stepped in front of the control panel and began to search the database for information related to Mu Qing's death. If he could find photos of Mu Qing's body after her death in the database, or if there was ironclad evidence of Mu Qing's death in the database, then he could basically be sure that the sucker was not Mu Qing. On the other hand, the possibility of the sucker being Mu Qing was greatly increased. While looking through the information, he found that although there was no record of Mu Qing's execution in the database, there was a lot of information that could prove that Mu Qing was dead. And in history, no one had ever questioned Mu Qing's death. While searching, he found a photo of Mu Qing's body. In the photo, her eyes were closed and she was dressed in black. Her body was mottled with blood, and she was frozen in a 3-meter-tall ice block. Looking at the photo, his heart ached. But the photo could be fake. In order to confirm the authenticity of the photo, he began to search for the location where Mu Qing's body was placed after her death. After searching the database for a while, he found a piece of information. There was a paragraph in it that described the whereabouts of Mu Qing's body after her death. Fragment of information. After Mu Qing's death, the Star City Army's personnel sealed her body in the underground air raid shelter forever, never to see the light of day. Realizing that Mu Qing's body was frozen in Star City, he could not help but look down at the sucker. He felt that the possibility of her being Mu Qing had greatly increased. But with this information alone, it was still not enough to prove that the sucker was Mu Qing. In order to understand the details, he began to search for the specific location of the underground air raid shelter. However, the information that he found next stunned him. According to the information, the air raid shelter in Star City had been demolished long ago, and a series of renovations and expansions had been carried out. In the end, it became the current Star City Sanctuary. In other words, the bomb shelter where Mu Qing's body was stored was inside the Star City underground shelter, where he was now. Looking around, the central square was filled with all kinds of machinery and instruments. The square was surrounded by iron doors, all of which were tightly shut. He had never seen what was stored behind these iron doors. It wasn't that he wasn't curious about what was behind the iron door. It was just that every time he entered the dream of the future, he was pressed for time and didn't have any extra time to explore this place in detail. Xiaohei was like a gangrene attached to his bones, causing him to not dare to waste a single second of his time elsewhere. But at this moment, in order to confirm whether the sucker was Mu Qing, he decided to enter the room behind these iron doors to find the truth. Time was of the essence, so he immediately walked to the nearest iron door. When he found that the iron door's handle was inlaid with a combination lock, he didn't hesitate and immediately lifted his leg to kick it. Fortunately, the metal material used to make the iron door was different from the metal door at the entrance of the passage. Under his violent kick, the iron door loosened and finally fell inwards. Along with the dust that hit his face, he smelled a strong, musty smell. But for Feng Qi, who could even tolerate his own stench, this musty smell was nothing. Fumbling around, he pressed the switch in the room, and the lights flickered. The room was about 100 square meters, and it was filled with white, black, and blue boxes. There were hundreds of boxes stacked together. Curious, he tried to open a white box. There were dozens of white paper boxes in the box. After opening the white paper boxes, he found that each white paper box had 3 tablets of medicine, and each tablet had more than 10 white pills. Since there was no instruction manual, he didn't know what these pills were. So he took out a pill, put it at the tip of his nose, and sniffed it, then licked it lightly. It was colorless and odorless, so it wasn't an energy pill made from a special spiritual plant. Just as he was wondering what these pills were for, the voice of the narrator sounded in his mind. This thing is commonly known as the human baby burping pill or the tadpole kicking pill. Its main effect is to strangle the small tadpoles so that they can't grow up healthily. The white box contains the short-acting medicine, the black box contains the emergency medicine, and the blue boxes contain the tadpole burping ring. Feng Qi was speechless. He looked down at the white pills in his hand, and his expression gradually became awkward. It wasn't hard for him to understand why there were so many tadpole burping products in the Star City Sanctuary. The Star City Sanctuary was built because of the rapid expansion of the territory. Humans could no longer survive on the surface and could only hide underground to survive. At this time, resources were particularly important, especially in terms of food resources. Even if the Star City Sanctuary could build a complete, self-sufficient food supply chain, the amount of resources produced was limited. Therefore, The population must be kept within a certain range. If there was a disorderly reproduction, it would lead to the collapse of the supply chain in the Star City Sanctuary, which would lead to disastrous consequences. In order to maintain the stable operation of the circulation system, the best way was to control the population and keep the number of people in the sanctuary within a certain range. The hundreds of boxes of tadpole-killing devices in the room existed for this reason, because everyone had different preferences in this area, such as the choice of whether to wear a tadpole membrane or not, the choice of whether to undergo surgery, or the choice of whether to take medicine. Therefore, it was understandable that there were many choices in the room. Just as he was about to turn around and leave, he noticed that the suction cup was chewing the tadpole-kicking pill he just put down. This thing can't be eaten. He quickly reached out and tried to grab the pill from the suction cup's mouth. But the suction cup refused to let go, and its head shook left and right as he pulled. In the end, with a helpless expression, the suction cup swallowed the tadpole-kicking pill along with its outer packaging. Chance of it being Mu-Ching plus 8%. This guy is definitely a foodie and dares to eat anything. I think so too. Feng-Chi nodded in agreement. He took the suction cup and left the room where the tadpole-killing devices were stored. He came to the door of the next room and began to violently kick the door again. After a series of heavy kicks, the iron door fell inwards. Facing the incoming dust, he stepped into the room. After he pressed the light switch, he saw the scene in the room. The room was about 500 to 600 square meters, and there were mechanical instruments neatly arranged in the room. This seemed to be a room dedicated to scientific research. The walls were covered with various numbers and formulas, as well as pictures and pictures. As he glanced around, one of the pictures caught his attention, because the figure in the picture was Xiao He, who he was very familiar with. Chapter 65. This was a room specially used for scientific research. There were all kinds of scientific research instruments inside. There were all kinds of mathematical formulas written on the walls and many pictures pasted on them. One of the pictures caught Feng-Chi's attention. He was surprised to find that the figure in the picture was actually Xiao He. Why would there be a picture of Xiao He in the laboratory? With doubts, he began to rummage through the records in the laboratory, trying to find information related to Xiao He. However, the records in the laboratory had all decayed. They would turn to ashes at the slightest touch. There was no way to obtain any information from these records. Feeling helpless, he walked to the wall. He took down Xiao He's picture and examined it carefully. The picture was taken from afar. In the picture, Xiao He's body was shrouded in black fog. However, he could still see the pair of scarlet eyes in the black fog. Under the blood moon, it looked particularly ghostly and terrifying. Flipping it over, he found a few lines of small words written behind Xiao He's picture. Unknown domain creature. T. Strength. Unknown domain characteristic. Unknown origin. Unknown introduction. The first non-social special domain creature to appear in the future city. Temporarily named T. It is unknown whether it has intelligence. This creature cannot coexist with other domain creatures. It will attack all creatures in sight, including domain creatures. It is especially aggressive toward humans. It is suspected that it is related to the destruction of the future city. Update Introduction 2. All domain creatures will become very irritable after seeing T. The reason is unknown. Update Introduction 3. T's form can be switched at any time. It can be solid or incorporeal. It is almost immune to physical damage. Feng-Chi originally thought that he would be able to find an explanation of Xiao He's origin in the Star City Sanctuary. However, he did not expect that even the people of the future could not figure out Xiao He's specific origin. Therefore, he could not find an answer as to why Xiao He wanted to kill him. However, he had seen Xiao He's introduction after the picture. Xiao He's body structure was very strange. He had only been pushed back when he was fighting with a bloody eye. During the battle with the single-horn domain creature, his body instantly turned incorporeal when he was hit by the single-horn domain creature's horn. After that, he returned to his original position without suffering any injuries. At that time, he was shocked by Xiao He's performance. After pasting Xiao He's photo back on the wall, he chose to leave the room. There was still a lot of information in this room, but he did not have time to stay here. Perhaps Xiao He was on his way here. He had to hurry up and find the answer. After leaving the room, he went to the door of the next room and began violently banging on the metal door. A moment later, the metal door collapsed. He walked into the room and pressed the light switch. Then he saw the scene in the room clearly. The floor of this room was not made of metal. There was a large shed inside. The floor was made of mud, and there were several large lamps hanging from the ceiling. Realizing that this was a room for growing plants, he immediately left and went to the next room, where he continued to violently knock on the door. After kicking open 3 iron doors in a row, he took a cursory glance at the room behind the door and left. None of these rooms had the answers he wanted. Looking around the underground plaza of shelter, there were hundreds of iron doors here. He realized that there was no time to check them one by one. Time was limited, so he could only choose to give up. He planned to kick open a few iron doors every time he entered the future dream. That way, he would be able to check all the rooms in the underground shelter. After leaving the room, he went straight to the control panel of the database. Then, he began to search for the basic training courses. After returning to reality, he was about to officially become a teacher. If he did not have the ability, he would not be able to teach at all. At the same time, he also promised the students in the training course to give a training course on the development of training methods. Naturally, he had to live up to his bragging. In this regard, he could only find a shortcut in the database of the future. As he searched, the relevant course titles were listed in front of him. Basic Training Method Research Method, First Episode, Video Explanation. Basic Training Method Research Method, Second Episode, Video Explanation. Advanced Training Method Research Method, Complete Video Explanation. Cultivation, detailed explanation of the relationship between the human body's meridians and spirit chi. First Episode, Video Explanation. Training Method, Research and Development of Physique Training Method and Spirit Training Method. Third Episode, Video Explanation. What surprised him was that the explanation videos of the Basic Training Method Research Method in the database were not included in the Training Method Access Authorization. In other words, as long as he had the time, he could watch the content in this area without limit. Thus, he immediately clicked on the video of Basic Training Method Research Method First Episode. As the video popped up, a middle-aged woman in a research uniform appeared on the screen and began to explain the Basic Training Method Research Method. When it came to learning, he was always full of motivation. After a simple adjustment of his mentality, he began to listen to the lecture with rapt attention. Compared to the theoretical foundation of modern training method research, the theoretical foundation of training method research grasped by people in the future was obviously more complete, and the basic content was more solid. In the first episode of the teaching video, it mainly explained the relationship between different human bodies' meridians. This point had many similarities with the human body circulation described in ancient medicine. Under the cleansing of spirit chi, the impurities accumulated in the meridians were washed away, allowing spirit chi to flow smoothly in the body. The significance of training method lay in how to effectively use spirit chi. During the circulation of spirit chi in the body, it nourished the body, strengthened the chi in blood, strengthened the internal organs, and even transformed into special spirit chi that could be stored and absorbed by the body. The strength of a training method was not only related to the efficiency of spirit chi conversion, but also had a great deal to do with the changes that the meridians would cause to the body. Different training methods would cause spirit chi to flow through different meridians in the body. In the end, the quality of spirit chi that could be combined with the body would be completely different. Spirit chi was like a continuous line that shuttled back and forth between different meridians. Some meridians even needed to be shuttled through repeatedly in the same training method, and at the same time, some meridians had to be avoided. Therefore, training method was a very complicated subject. During the lecture, Feng Qi kept nodding. He had learned a lot of useful knowledge from the teaching video. As time passed, the 2-hour video finished playing. In order to ensure the quality of the teaching when he returned to reality, he clicked on it a second time and began to review. He did not know where Xiao He was now. As for going out and waiting, it was obviously a waste of time. Therefore, he chose to study while waiting. When he was halfway through the second time, the narrator coughed in his mind. Ahem. When he heard the prompt, he did not need to think carefully. He immediately turned his head and looked in the direction of the metal passage. As expected, Xiao He, who was shrouded in black fog, was coming down from the metal passage. Seeing this, he lowered his head and looked at the sucker that was sleeping with its eyes closed. Then, he said solemnly, I'm sorry. I'll take revenge for you when I come back next time. Chapter 66. Although he felt guilty, he still ruthlessly threw the sucker with a confused look at Xiao He. He would take his revenge next time. After the sleeping sucker left his body, it opened its eyes in the air and smashed onto Xiao He. The black fog on Xiao He's body instantly shrunk and wrapped around the sucker, launching an attack. The sucker's grayish-white eyes were covered by starlight when it was attacked. It suddenly turned around and punched Xiao He. Xiao He's body was distorted under the heavy blow. Finally, the punch penetrated the black fog and smashed into the ground, creating a 2-meter-wide metal crater and causing the ground to shake. However, this attack did not cause any harm to Xiao He. Its body that was penetrated quickly healed in the blink of an eye. The battle was about to start. At this moment, Feng Qi continued to flip through the knowledge in the database. This time the future dream, he still had one more permission to look up techniques. Naturally, he could not waste it. After watching the second video explaining the basic techniques, he clicked on the cultivation technique library. In the selection, he chose a 2-star spirit cultivation technique, soul assimilation. This was a special spirit cultivation technique that pursued mental strength even more than heaven and earth meditation. After learning it, the spirit chi in the body could spread along with mental strength to interfere with the enemy's consciousness and even temporarily control the enemy. The reason why he always chose a 2-star cultivation technique and not a 3-star one was not because he did not want to. It was because he had limited time. A 3-star cultivation technique was much more complicated than a 2-star one. With limited time, it was obvious that a 2-star cultivation technique was the most suitable choice. In the learning process, he felt the ground shake and heard the occasional explosion. He could not concentrate and could not help but roar. So noisy. Look who cares about you. Don't you know? He turned his head and saw that Xiao He and the sucker had broken through a metal door in the chaotic battle. At the moment, there was a fierce battle inside the metal door. Along with the falling rocks, their figures were quickly buried. However, the battle did not end. He could still hear the fierce fighting inside. At this moment, the pile of rubble exploded, and Xiao He and the suction cup appeared. At this moment, Suction Cup's entire body was shrouded in black mist, and he was struggling with all his might. Every punch that landed on Xiao He's body did not have any effect, but the ground trembled incessantly. Go sucker! Kill him! After saying that, he immediately turned around and continued to read the cultivation method. The commotion around him greatly reduced his learning efficiency, but he did not give up. He forced himself to continuously memorize the details of the cultivation technique. As time passed, he gradually got used to the constant sound around him and continued to concentrate on his studies. After he finished watching the video, he turned around and saw that the suction cups were still beating Xiao He like crazy. Xiao He couldn't do anything about the suction cup either. Every time the black mist was about to envelop the suction cup would always be able to forcefully break free. Through his observation, he discovered that the black fog on Xiao He's body would actually fall off during the battle and fall to the ground, still flashing with electric arcs. Although he was curious about the substance that fell off Xiao He's body, he did not dare to go closer to observe. It was not that he was afraid, but that the most important thing now was to study. He clicked on the soul assimilation tutorial and began to watch it for the second time. Once again, he entered a state where he only focused on reading the book and paid no attention to what was happening outside. During his revision, he kept recording the key points of knowledge. When he encountered a complicated question, he would drag the progress bar back and watch the content of the tutorial again. This time, he discovered that his memory seemed to have improved while he was memorizing the cultivation method. He felt that it might have something to do with his body's growth. But it could also be that practice makes perfect, or it could just be an illusion. After he finished watching the video for the second time, a long time had passed. When he turned around, he saw that the battle between Xiao He and the suction cup was still ongoing. The two figures were tangled together, and it seemed like there was no clear winner. Since he was not affected by the battle, he continued to browse through the contents of the database. He had already memorized the relevant content of the cultivation method, soul assimilation. Next, he clicked on the videos related to the research of the cultivation method and continued to study. Since he was already very interested in this content, he gradually became fascinated by it as he studied. When the instructor in the video explained a key point of knowledge, the figure of Xiao He and the suction cup flashed in front of him. Then, the big screen in front of the control panel suddenly made a loud noise. Half of it shattered, revealing the intertwined cables inside. Electric arcs were sizzling. Feng Qi was speechless. Fortunately, the video was gone, but he could still hear the sound. Feeling helpless, he could only choose to continue the lesson by listening. However, without the video demonstration, he felt that the learning process was lacking. However, he did not want to waste the remaining time, so he had to make do. As he listened to the instructor's explanation, his gaze occasionally glanced at Xiao He and the suction cup to observe their movements. After a while, he suddenly stood up and decisively turned around and pounced backward. As Xiao He and the suction cup flashed past, the control panel made a loud noise and a cloud of black smoke rose. The instructor's voice suddenly became intermittent and finally went silent. Damn it! Looking at this scene, he could not help but curse. You guys fight. I'm leaving. After glancing at the suction cup and Xiao He again, he decisively turned around and walked toward the metal tunnel. Since the database had been destroyed, there was obviously no point in staying here. Before he stepped into the metal tunnel, he looked back again and realized that the suction cup's movements had obviously slowed down during the battle. It seemed to be a little tired. Realizing that the battle was coming to an end, he could not help but sigh. He felt a little guilty about the suction cup. However, he still walked into the metal tunnel without hesitation and walked toward the surface. After leaving the Star City underground shelter, he began to vent his anger. Along the way, he caught zombies and death worms and gave them a good beating. His body was also changing as he continued to absorb qi and blood. He could clearly feel that his strength and muscle toughness had increased. While the suction cup could still hold Xiao He back, he decided to use the remaining time to increase his strength. And if he wanted to increase his strength, he had to hunt. Although he could not fight against those powerful domain creatures, killing zombies and death worms, which were derived from domain creatures, was effortless for him. The toughness in his title had also leveled up to level 3 after he killed dozens of death worms. He could clearly feel that after completing the advancement, his muscles were much less stiff. When he stretched, they became more elastic. The feeling of his body's strength increasing was fascinating. Just as he was about to continue heading east, the narrator's voice rang in his mind. Thoughts travel 300 miles with the wind. Don't ask when you'll return. Have a safe journey. Looking back, Xiao He was quickly approaching from afar. Realizing that he was going to die again, he smiled faintly. I'll go buy a few oranges. Narrator, wait for me to come back. Crawl. Chapter 67. Sitting in front of his desk, Feng Qi flipped through the freshman list. Based on the information he received from the future, he was certain that some of the freshmen were spies. To be more precise, some of the freshmen were already members of the mysterious organization before they entered Star City University. Therefore, if he wanted to investigate the mysterious organization that targeted the Scarlet Institute and sent him to the guillotine, he could start from the background of these freshmen. He opened his notebook and wrote down the freshmen' names and backgrounds. Monk, background, Golden Immortal Temple. Lu Yu, background. Unknown, Yang Xiaoxin, background. Star City Army. Lu Pingyan, background. Science and Technology Research Institute. Yin Fu, background. Mountain Domain Battle Group. Jia Yi, background. 8 Trigrams Talisman Array Research Institute. Xiaolong, Xiaohu, Xiaobao, background. Beast Domain Battle Group. Kaigua, background. 8th Army Medical Research Institute. Su Hongyun, background. Sky Shatterer Corporation. These 11 freshmen all had powerful backgrounds. Among them, he could first rule out the possibility that Monk was a werewolf. Because Monk didn't join the organization he established in the future and parted ways with him after graduation, it was impossible for him to receive information from the organization and pass it on. As for the remaining 10 freshmen, the organization behind each of them could be the mysterious organization. Although Lu Yu's background was mysterious, he was the one who came into contact with a mysterious organization and passed it on to the organization. Therefore, the possibility of him being a werewolf was very low. Next was Yang Xiaoxin. She was the second member of the organization to be caught, so the possibility of her being a werewolf was also low. However, both of them couldn't completely rule it out. He flipped through the freshman list again. Looking at the freshmen's photos, he fell into deep thought. There could be one or several spies. Therefore, this time he couldn't just randomly establish an organization and expose himself. Otherwise, history would repeat itself the next time he entered the future dream. The existence of this mysterious organization also made him curious about the Scarlet Institute. He didn't understand why they targeted the Scarlet Institute. Could it be that the Scarlet Institute was the organization that protected human geniuses, and the mysterious organization was the hunter in the dark? Unable to figure out the reason, he rubbed his temples, stood up, and left the dormitory. Outside, it was clear after the rain, and there was a glimmer of dawn. There were many students in sportswear running around the lakeside. There were even couples sitting on benches. Compared to the future dream, the real world was filled with life. He took a deep breath of fresh air, and a look of enjoyment appeared on his face. There were good and evil in the human civilization, but as long as there was something beautiful that was worth preserving, it was worth his life to protect. After arriving at the dining hall and having breakfast with Mu Qing and Lin Ran, he and Lin Ran went straight to the academy's field. The arrival of new students was a major event for Star City University. All the freshmen, except for him, had been arranged for a month of special training. Similar to the military training before the Cataclysm, the purpose of the special training was to train the freshmen's endurance and teamwork. At the same time, the freshmen also had an extra task. They were to practice the latest version of the gymnastics training, which was the version that he had copied from the future. The improvement of the gymnastics training received great attention from the Tiger Soul Institute. While recording the latest version of the gymnastics training into the technique database and sharing it with the entire human race, the Tiger Soul Institute also issued new regulations to the various universities. They required the freshmen of the various universities to practice the gymnastics training for a month. The universities would also record the details and report it to the Tiger Soul Institute after the special training. At the same time, the Tiger Soul Institute added a referral at the end of the latest announcement, which recorded his personal history in detail. The meaning was that the various universities could pay special attention to this new student. As a result, when he returned to Star City High School, he received letters of recommendation from the various universities. When the invigilators arrived, the teachers of the various universities specially came to him and proposed a series of generous benefits, such as an annual scholarship of 500,000 yuan, a super luxurious single-person dorm, and so on. In short, the teachers of the various universities only expressed one thing to him. As long as he could come, the benefits and whatnot were negotiable. However, he had promised by Fuxing first. Moreover, Lin Ran and Mu Qing were in Star City University. Naturally, he rejected all of them. At this moment, the special training instructors, led by Bai Fuxing, were training the freshmen on the field. The weather was much cooler after the rain, but as the sun rose, the air gradually became hot and dry. In the scorching summer, even standing in such an environment would make one sweat profusely. Furthermore, the freshmen had to undergo high-intensity exercises from time to time. It was really unbearable. In the new world, which was shrouded in spirit energy, the physical fitness of ordinary people had greatly improved compared to before the Cataclysm. However, most of the freshmen had not come into contact with any cultivation techniques other than the gymnastics training. Their physical fitness was completely incomparable to that of a real cultivator. Therefore, the process of the special training was a test of willpower. However, there were exceptions. Those who were able to come to Star City University were basically the elites of their respective universities. There was no lack of freshmen who had come into contact with cultivation techniques in advance. Feng Qi had also come into contact with cultivation under the guidance of Wang Jinsheng before graduation. He had also mastered a lot of basic knowledge in this area. Therefore, there were many outstanding freshmen who stood out during the special training. At this moment, Feng Qi and Lin Ran were squatting in a corner of the field. They were licking the popsicles they brought from Shuefu restaurant under the complicated gazes of anger, envy, and desire of the freshmen. As he glanced around, he felt that the freshmen in his class did not look like good people. "Brother Qi, is that Baldy a freshman in our class?" Lin Ran pointed at the monk in the distance and asked. At this moment, the monk's appearance had changed. He had changed into a brand new special training uniform. The tattered cloth shoes on his feet had also changed into brand new sneakers. The only thing that remained unchanged was his bald head that shone brightly under the sunlight. When Feng Qi heard this, he nodded. However, his gaze was focused on a freshman not far away. This person was about 1.8 meters tall. He had a well-proportioned body and was very handsome. He had sharp eyebrows and bright eyes, and he looked quite righteous. What was different from the other freshmen was that he always carried an ancient longsword on his back. It never left his body during the training. During the training, this freshman was expressionless the entire time. The special training did not seem to be a challenge to him at all. After half a day of special training, not only did he not pant, but his forehead did not even have a drop of sweat. Feng Qi did not pay attention to this freshman's performance during the special training. He was not the only freshman present who could easily handle the special training. Many of the other freshmen who had come into contact with cultivation techniques in advance could also do the same. He paid attention to this freshman because he was the most mysterious freshman of Combat Class 3, Lu Yu. When he thought of the blank background on the freshman list, he became very interested in him. He really wanted to know where he came from and why he was so mysterious. At this moment, Bai Fuxing's shout echoed throughout the field. "Everyone is dismissed. Rest for 15 minutes. Hearing Bai Fuxing's words, the freshmen who were standing upright all laid down on the ground. They chatted with each other and complained about the hardship of the training. As for Lu Yu, who Feng Qi was paying attention to, after hearing the dismissal, he directly walked towards him. Standing in front of him, Liu Yu asked expressionlessly, "What about you? You seem to have been observing me. Is there something you need?" Feng Qi did not hide his identity. He stood up and introduced himself with a smile. "My name is Feng Qi. I am a teacher of Combat Class 3. I will also be your class teacher in a month. Therefore, I specially came to see the performance of the freshmen in my class during the special training." Hearing these words, Lu Yu's face showed a hint of astonishment. It was as if he couldn't believe that his teacher was actually so young. "Hello, I am Lin Ran. I'm also a freshman of Combat Class 3. I am your senior and classmate." At this moment, Lin Ran also stood up and introduced himself to Lu Yu with a smile. "Lin Ran, you are the Lin Ran who was accepted by the Tiger Soul Institute in advance." "That's right." Hearing Lin Ran's affirmation, Lu Yu's cold expression faded. He extended his hand and shook Lin Ran's hand. When his gaze once again landed on Feng Qi, Lu Yu withdrew his contempt. Although he still couldn't understand why his teacher was so young, since this person was able to obtain Lin Ran's approval and was appointed as the teacher of Combat Class 3, he felt that there must be something extraordinary about him. "Classmate Lu Yu, can I ask you a question?" At this moment, Feng Qi spoke with a smile. "Please ask." Lu Yu nodded. "Why is your identity information completely blank? Can you tell me about your background?" Before starting the investigation, he decided to just ask directly. It would be best if he could answer. If it was inconvenient for him to reveal anything, then he would think of a way. Hearing this, Lu Yu was clearly stunned. Then, he shook his head and said, "It's not convenient for me to say this. It's not convenient for me to reveal that. Even the principal doesn't know about my background." "So mysterious? Could it be that you are the illegitimate child of some research institute boss?" Lin Ran asked with a curious expression. No. The veins on Lu Yu's forehead throbbed. Then he continued. Lin Ran, if it's you, maybe one day you will know my background because you will also have the opportunity to go to the place I came from. I hate riddlers the most. We don't want you to reveal any information about the organization behind you. We just want to know your name. Can't we do that? Lin Ran was slightly speechless. Hearing Lin Ran's words, Feng Qi couldn't help but nod. This was because Lin Ran's words struck a chord in his heart. This Lu Yu was simply a riddler. He was always hiding something when he spoke. Looking at Feng Qi and Lin Ran's disdainful expressions, Lu Yu was a little embarrassed. After hesitating for a moment, he said, It's not that I don't want to say it, but the confidentiality level is too high. Even my name is the highest level of confidentiality. Hearing this, Feng Qi wanted to know even more, because the more he knew, the more information he could access in the future database. Looking at Feng Qi and Lin Ran's disdainful expressions, Lu Yu hesitated for a while before finally speaking. I'm from the Heavenly Path. I really can't reveal anything else. Heavenly Path? At this moment, he made a decision. The next time he entered the future dream, he would search for information related to the Heavenly Path. Chapter 68. Sitting in front of his desk, Feng Qi searched for information on the internet. But just as he thought, there was no record of any information related to the Heavenly Path on the internet. He couldn't even find out if the Heavenly Path was the name of a place or a mysterious organization. He closed the search page and opened Star City University's official website. Then, he logged into his teacher's account to look at the upcoming class schedule. After opening his email, he saw a blue email with a class schedule attached, as well as a red notification email. Curious, he clicked on the red email. Tiger Soul Institute, certified. Content. The 26th concept competition for the new system of cultivation techniques is about to be held. This competition will be broadcasted live on the internet. Teachers from various institutions will have to lead their classes to participate. The competition will be based on the content of cultivation techniques. The winning class will receive a cash prize of 5 million. Details of the competition. This competition will be similar to the previous ones. Each institution's class will provide an example of the concept of a new development direction for cultivation techniques. Then, with this concept as the core topic, the webcast will explain the expansion of this concept and its advantages and disadvantages compared to the old system of cultivation techniques. Competition scoring. During the preliminaries and qualifiers, the competition will be judged online. The Tiger Soul Institute's team will analyze and grade the concepts proposed by the participating classes. The final champion will be decided. The Tiger Soul Institute reserves all rights to explain this event. After reading the contents of the email released by the Tiger Soul Institute, Feng Qi was instantly tempted. He clicked on the search website and looked up the previous concept competitions held by the Tiger Soul Institute. This made him even more tempted. Aside from the 5 million in cash, another important reason was that this concept competition would add fuel to the fire for the construction of a new cultivation technique system. The development of cultivation techniques would always start with the concept, then the theory, and finally the practice. This process was actually from the emotional understanding to the rational understanding. Then the abstract ideas would be generalized, and finally the theory and practice step. The Tiger Soul Institute was one of the pioneers in the research of cultivation techniques. Its core research direction was to improve and update the cultivation technique system. Every time before the cultivation technique system was updated, the Tiger Soul Institute would place great importance on it. When necessary, it would also adopt concepts proposed by the outside world and perfect them into a new cultivation method system. Classes that wanted to participate in the competition had to first come up with a new concept for their cultivation system, and then explain the feasibility of this concept in the live broadcast room. If they passed the preliminary round and the qualifiers, the final concept would be analyzed and interpreted by the Tiger Soul Institute's team. No matter how imaginative the concept was, it could be entered as long as there was a corresponding theoretical explanation. This was also the reason why the Tiger Soul Institute had chosen to gather the wisdom of the masses. Sometimes, a concept born from a burst of inspiration might become a major cultivation system in the future. Just like when humans were still thinking of using technological power to defeat invaders, someone suddenly had a flash of inspiration and proposed the concept of guiding spiritual energy into the body to strengthen oneself, thereby obtaining the same powerful strength as a domain creature. Later on, this concept developed into the modern cultivation study with the help of the predecessors. After pondering for a moment, Feng Qi decided to participate in this competition. For the sake of 5 million yuan, he also wanted to contribute to the construction of the new cultivation system. This time, in the future dream, he had learned 1.5 video tutorials on the theoretical foundations of cultivation techniques. This knowledge could be used in the competition. However, the current problem was that the registration needed to be done as a class. His students were all in special training and had no time to participate with him. At this thought, he dialed Bai Fuxing's number. After waiting for a moment, the call went through. Bai Fuxing's voice came from the other end. "Kid, what's the matter?" "Grandmaster, have you seen the Tiger Soul Institute's latest announcement?" "You mean the cultivation technique concept competition? Why? Do you want to participate?" Bai Fuxing was slightly surprised. "That's right. I happen to have a new concept. I think I can win a championship." Upon hearing Feng Qi's straightforward, pretentious words, Bai Fuxing blushed with shame. He couldn't help but persuade him. Anyone can come up with a concept, but the most important thing in the concept competition is that you have to prove the feasibility of the concept with theory. Otherwise, some stupid concepts can't be perfected into theory and practical content, even by the Tiger Soul Institute. For example, in the previous competition, a class in the Future Academy came up with the concept of endless cultivation. It talked about how to make the cultivation technique automatically circulate in the body when one is not cultivating and absorb spirit energy from the outside world. This stupid concept had the highest online votes at that time. In the end, it was unanimously rejected by the Tiger Soul Institute's team in the finals because their concept was pure nonsense. According to the Tiger Soul Institute's director Liu, this concept was easy to come up with, but the Tiger Soul Institute's team couldn't perfect it at all. So, are you sure you want to participate? After listening to Bai Fuxing's conversation, he nodded again and said, "It's not a big problem. We should be the champion. Right now, we're thinking about how to spend the 5 million yuan. Bai Fuxing was speechless. "By the way, Grandmaster, if we win the 5 million yuan, will it go to the class or to me?" Upon realizing that Feng Qi was really thinking about how to spend the 5 million yuan, the veins on Bai Fuxing's forehead throbbed. He couldn't help but say, "If you can win a championship, the 5 million yuan will be yours. In addition, the Academy will give you another 3 million yuan as a reward." "Thank you, Grandmaster. What are you thanking me for?" "We'll talk after you get it. It's not a big problem to win the championship. The problem now is that the registration needs to be based on classes. I need a class." At this moment, he made his request. Faced with such a confident Feng Qi, Bai Fuxing was obviously a little moved. After a moment of silence, he said, "How about this? When the time comes, you'll lead the 20-second cultivation technique class 1 to participate in the competition." Upon hearing this, he couldn't help but ask curiously, "Does the homeroom teacher of cultivation technique class 1 have any objections?" What objections can he have? Star City University isn't good at this kind of competition. It's generally monopolized by the Galactic Academy, Lingxiao Academy, and other academies that specialize in cultivation technique research. At most, we'll be a foil in the competition. We've never thought of winning the championship. Since you have an idea, we'll let you try. Then there's no problem. Grandmaster, please arrange it for me as soon as possible. However, I still have to remind you, since you decided to participate in the competition, you have to give it your all. Outside, you're representing Star City University. No matter how bad you are, you can't lose too badly. Grandmaster, I think you've misunderstood the concept of a genius. Their confidence usually comes from their absolute strength. Bai Fuxing was speechless. Chapter 69. After contacting Bai Fuxing to participate in the concept competition organized by the Tiger Soul Institute, Feng Qi received a new class schedule on the same day. Next, he would lead the 20-second cultivation method class 1 to participate in the competition. He would have one class every day. On the same day, he squeezed out the physical training class of the cultivation method class 1 and arranged a cultivation method class for him. Feng-Chi was very confident in his ability to win the concept competition. He was using the future cultivation method system to participate in the competition. This knowledge was no longer a concept. It was already a part of the complete cultivation system framework. Therefore, even if there were many geniuses participating in the competition, he would be able to win easily. Others relied on strength, while he relied on cheats. There was no comparison. The first cultivation method class was at 1 in the afternoon. Before the class started, he sat in front of his desk, opened his notebook, and started a plan for the future. The core of his plans for the future was always this: stay in the present and go wild in the future. This was also a last resort. The present was the cornerstone of the future. If he made a mistake in the present, it could lead to irreversible consequences in the future. For example, in the present, he had accidentally become a traitor to humanity. Therefore, every time he entered the future dream, he would start off as a traitor to humanity. This was a situation that was close to certain death. Therefore, in order to ensure that he had more choices in the future and could find more useful information, he had to stay in the present and not go wild. However, not going wild referred to not courting death. It didn't mean that he couldn't be high profile. For example, he couldn't contact the Scarlet Institute or investigate sensitive matters like the mysterious organization. As for the possibility of being assassinated after becoming a genius, this was a risk he had to take. This was to promote the development of human cultivation and the path that science had to take in the future. If he didn't do anything in the present, no matter how hard he worked in the future, he wouldn't be able to solve the current predicament humanity was facing. Spreading cultivation methods and other contents in the present world would promote the development of human civilization as a whole. In the future, he would look for the cancer hidden in human civilization and find a way to remove it. Although the direction was different, both were very important. If in the present world he was standing at a fork in the road and facing a choice, then in the future he would be a pathfinder who explored the different forks in the future. Without the present world, there was no room for choice. Without the future, there was no chance of trial and error. Only by combining the two could he find a real way out for the future of human civilization. After pondering for a moment, he picked up the pen and began to write down his future plans in his notebook. At this moment, he had two choices for his future plans in his mind. The first was to let the future him live on, as long as the future him lived long enough, until Mu Qing's betrayal and Lin Ran's creation of a cultivation technique. Then he would appear to stop them. This way, the future would definitely undergo earth-shattering changes. She could also learn the truth behind Mu Qing's betrayal. However, this step had many potential risks. First of all, would he really be able to survive until then? Since the first time he entered the future dream, his lifespan had been like that of a dying man with a rope tied around his neck. Half of his leg was already hanging in the air, and there was always an accident that would cause him to die a strange death. Therefore, after careful consideration, he chose to give up on the idea of living. In the end, he chose the second option, which was to let his future self take the risk to obtain more information. At least by doing this, he had already obtained a lot of useful information. From the initial suspicion of Mu Qing's betrayal, to the discovery that the Scarlet Institute might be a cancer rooted in human civilization, to the existence of a secret organization in the dark, to the hidden undercover students, and so on. This important information was all obtained through his future self's adventures. As he wrote, there were 5 new messages for the future in his notebook. First, continue to form the organization, but always keep an eye out. When necessary, provide different information to each student and help me filter out which student is the undercover werewolf. Second, if you will definitely die, you can choose to give your email to someone you trust and tell them your secret. Let them continue to leave messages. Third, please give birth to a child. If you don't give birth, will I get access to the account? Every time I ask you to give birth, you don't give birth. Is it so hard for you to give birth to a descendant? Even if you don't do anything, just leave a descendant for me. Access to the account is too important. Fourth, regarding Mu Qing, continue to try to influence her. No matter what her real goal is, try to dissuade her from taking that step. Fifth, study hard and improve every day. If you lose your cheat, you will definitely feel a strong sense of loss. Although you can't compare to historical geniuses like Lin Ran and Mu Qing, you still have to believe in yourself. After the messages ended, it was already noon. He closed his notebook, left the dorm, and walked straight to the Shuifa restaurant. He was always full of expectations when it came to dry food. There were many beautiful things in this world, and one of them was delicious food. After chatting with Lin Ran and Mu Qing for lunch, Feng Qi returned to the dorm. After a simple rest, he got up and went straight to Cultivation Method Class 1 to prepare for class. When he arrived at Cultivation Method Class 1, the class was already filled with students. Even the walkways were filled with students from other classes. After learning that Feng Qi was coming to Cultivation Method Class 1 through the change in the class schedule, a large number of students who knew about it beforehand came to watch the class. The students who had attended Feng Qi's class all admired him from the bottom of their hearts. From the ferocious tiger fist that had caused a sensation in the Star City Academy's forum, to the subsequent explanations of the martial arts, Feng Qi was able to bring new knowledge to the students every time, allowing them to have a deeper understanding of the martial arts. Therefore, his class was now the most popular class among the students of Star City University. The content of each class would become the hottest topic of the day. Feng Qi walked to the front of the lectern, looked at the students below, and said with a smile, "Hello, everyone. Next, prepare for class. In this class, we will be talking about the theoretical foundation of cultivation method research." As he spoke, he opened the control panel on the lectern and entered the theoretical foundation of cultivation method research. Immediately, the corresponding words appeared on the blackboard. Before the class officially started, he looked around and suddenly noticed a familiar figure sitting in the corner. This person was Lin Ran. Is the theoretical foundation of cultivation method something you can attend? Don't you have any self-awareness? Thinking of this, he immediately said, "Before class starts, can I trouble the third student in the corner of the last row?" "Yes, the one with the head in the corner. Please leave." Lin Ran, who was hiding in the corner, heard this and instantly had a wronged expression. Under Feng Qi's gaze, he could only get up and leave, his eyes filled with reluctance. Chapter 70. Looking at the students who were listening attentively, Feng Qi, who was standing in front of the podium, spoke with a smile on his face. Facing the class, he was now at ease and did not have the slightest nervousness or stage fright. At this time, other than his lecture, there was only the sound of the students taking notes. The learning atmosphere was very strong. As for whether the students could understand the content he was talking about, he was not worried at all, because he was talking about the summary of future people and the template content that was specifically used for teaching. It was easy to understand. Since he decided to bring Cultivation Method Class 1 to the upcoming Tiger Spirit Concept competition, he had to propose a competition concept. After explaining the first section of basic cultivation method research, he threw out a question. Everyone knows that the acupoints and meridians in the human body are the most important nodes of spirit energy circulation in cultivation. Then I want to ask everyone, how much do you know about the internal organs of the human body? Faced with the question, a girl wearing glasses immediately raised her hand. After Feng Qi nodded, the female student stood up and said, "The internal organs can't be the same as the meridians and acupoints, which can be used to transport spirit energy. However, using spirit energy to nourish the internal organs can have the effect of strengthening the body. Especially for cultivators who are inclined to body cultivation, the internal organs are not only important organs to store spirit energy, but also important parts to improve the strength of the body." Hearing the student's answer, Feng Qi nodded and then continued to ask, "Then do you think the internal organs can be compared to the acupoints and meridians in cultivation?" Faced with the question, the female student shook her head decisively. For the human body, the 5 viscera and 6 bowels are indispensable organs. They are also an important part of the human body. However, from the perspective of cultivation, the 5 viscera and 6 bowels are far less important than the acupoints and meridians of the body. And from the perspective of cultivation, in order to nourish the internal organs, cultivators need to consume extra spirit energy, which is completely a burden in cultivation. Well said. Your argument is also the general view of the internal organs at this stage of cultivation. Fengqi nodded and motioned for the female student to sit down. This is the concept that our class needs to propose in the next competition. Can we try to develop the 5 viscera and 6 bowels so that they have the same effect as acupoints and meridians, so that the 5 viscera and 6 bowels also have the special effect of feeding back to the body? Hearing Fengqi's words, another student immediately raised his hand. After receiving Fengqi's approval, the student stood up and inquired, "Miss Feng, the research on the 5 viscera and 6 bowels has actually been carried out by the various major cultivation method research institutes. However, there hasn't been any good news in this regard. If we were to propose a cultivation concept related to the 5 viscera and 6 bowels, it would be very difficult to find the corresponding information to help us obtain results in the competition." Fengqi completely understood this student's doubts. This question was not something that only the people of the future thought of. It should be said that the study of cultivation had already begun in the early stages of development. After all, the 5 viscera and 6 bowels were important organs of the human body. In the path of cultivation, humans would definitely try to develop the deeper functions of these organs. What he needed to do was to help the humans fill in the gaps in this area. Thinking of this, he immediately spoke. In fact, as early as ancient times, we humans had a deep exploration of the 5 viscera and 6 bowels. In the vague concept of the ancients, there was a god living in our heart, liver, spleen, lungs, and kidneys, guarding the health of the human body. If we were sick, we only needed to call out the name of the god in the corresponding organ, and the disease would be cured. Hearing Fengqi, who had always been rigorous and detailed in his lectures, talk about ancient myths, the students were confused. They could not understand what he was trying to say. However, when they heard the next content, the expressions of the students gradually changed. In ancient myths and stories, the 5 viscera are important organs that feed back to the body. However, from the perspective of modern cultivation, the 5 viscera and 6 bowels are organs that share the consumption of spirit energy. Instead, they become a burden. If the 5 viscera and 6 bowels are damaged in battle, they will become a burden to the body during battle. Then, let's propose a hypothesis. Can we plant a god in the 5 viscera and 6 bowels so that these organs have the effect of feeding back to the body as described in ancient myths and legends? For this cultivation concept, I call it the body plant god. The content that Fengqi was talking about was a path that cultivation would inevitably take in the future. The body plant god was also known as the organs plant god. The core of modern cultivation was the meridians and acupoints, and the future was no exception. However, there was also a further development of the 5 viscera and 6 bowels. For example, the heart was the power source of the human circulatory system. In the concept of the plant god, it was no longer about using spirit energy to nourish the heart and make it stronger. Instead, it was about using spirit energy to condense a golden elixir in the heart, making it inseparable from the heart. It would provide a steady flow of energy to the heart, and then the heart would nourish the whole body. This golden elixir was the so-called god. It was the same for other body organs. As long as the god was planted, the strength and effectiveness of the body organs would be greatly improved. For example, one of the main functions of the kidneys was to detoxify and remove the metabolites in the body. If the god was planted in the kidneys, the detoxification effect of the kidneys would be greatly enhanced. It could even resist the toxins that were spat out by domain creatures. The core concept of the so-called plant god was to create a spirit energy condensed body that was completely integrated with the organs in the 5 viscera and 6 bowels. In other words, it was the power source. It would assist the operation of the organs, greatly increasing their effectiveness. This concept was first inspired by a future cultivation method researcher from ancient myths. People in ancient times felt that there was a god living in the five viscera of the body. The god in the heart was called Dan Yuan, and his courtesy name was Sholing. The god in the liver was called Long Yin, and his courtesy name was Han Ming. The god in the spleen was called Chang Zai, and his courtesy name was Hun Ting. The god in the lungs was called Hao Hua, and his courtesy name was Su Cheng. The god in the kidney was called Xian Ming, and his courtesy name was Yuanying. According to the myths, these gods protected the body organs and nourished the body, making the host healthy and strong. Thus, the cultivation method researcher was inspired and proposed the cultivation concept of the plant god in the human body. This concept was continuously developed and perfected by later generations, and finally became one of the core contents of the cultivation system. The content that Feng Qi was talking about was related to this. Listening to his narration, the students went from being confused at the beginning to being shocked. They realized that the content that Feng Qi was talking about was not completely made up of concepts. In fact, there was already a system of theoretical knowledge. This theoretical knowledge could even allow them to carry out the next step of practice. Before Feng Qi proposed this concept, they generally thought that the five viscera and 6 bowels were the important organs of the human body. However, from the perspective of cultivation, these organs were undoubtedly a burden. However, the concept that Feng Qi threw out made them discover a new continent. They suddenly felt that it was just that humans had not fully developed and used the human organs at this stage. In fact, these organs could also be used to help in cultivation, and it was even more beneficial for increasing one's strength. The students once again had a new understanding of Feng Qi's knowledge. Looking at Feng Qi, who was speaking with confidence and assurance, they could not hide the admiration in their eyes. At this moment, there were even students who felt that with a genius like Feng Qi, humans would not have to worry about not being able to dispel all the domains in the future. After a period of time, Feng Qi still continued his lecture. The students were also engrossed in his lecture and had no intention of leaving. The students outside the classroom were the same. Their expressions were focused, afraid that they would miss out on the content of the lecture. Although they had been standing there for half a day, they did not have any intention of leaving. The notebooks in their hands were filled with knowledge points. At this moment, Lin Ran, who had been hiding in a corner outside the classroom and eavesdropping for a long time, was also shocked. He had always felt that Feng Qi was the greatest help to him on the path of cultivation technique research. After listening to this lecture, he was even more certain of this belief. As the saying goes, one is marked by the company one keeps. With Feng Qi, a peerless genius in the field of cultivation technique research, by his side, he felt that he would definitely be influenced and have some achievements in the field of cultivation technique research. Feng Qi, who was still in the classroom, naturally did not know what Lin Ran was thinking at this moment. Otherwise, he would definitely rush out of the classroom and give Lin Ran, who was hiding in the corner, a complete set of fierce tiger fist to let him know what cruelty was. Chapter 71. In class, Feng Qi explained in detail the theory of the spirit in the human body. For this Tiger Soul concept competition, the participating classes only needed to provide the concept and then use the theoretical outline to prove that the concept had the potential to be further developed. If the concept was selected by the Tiger Soul Institute, the subsequent refinement of the concept would also be carried out by the Tiger Soul Institute. After all, a lot of effort was required to transform the concept into actual content, and the research team of the Tiger Soul Institute was definitely more professional than any of the participating classes in this aspect. However, Feng Qi didn't intend to be perfunctory. Since he came up with the concept of the spirit in the human body, he naturally wouldn't let the Tiger Soul Institute spend a lot of time perfecting the concept. He planned to directly provide detailed theoretical knowledge for the competition. This way, he could guarantee that he would get the prize money, and at the same time, this concept would have a huge impact on future generations. After all, under normal circumstances, this concept would only be officially included in the cultivation system 400 years later. Now that he was promoting the concept of the spirit in the human body, it was equivalent to modern cultivation research on organs. It saved him 400 years of effort and continued to develop on this foundation. The impact on the future would be very far-reaching. He lectured for a full 4 hours in this class before stopping. While he felt his mouth dry up, he looked at the students below and said, "Sorry, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I've talked a little too much today and seriously exceeded the time limit. That's all for today's class. If there's anything you don't understand, you can discuss it with each other after class or contact me through the school's intranet. I'll reply when I'm free. That's all, class dismissed." When Feng Qi finished speaking, the classroom was filled with thunderous applause. This class had overturned many students' understanding of a human body structure and the role of the human organs. Even after class, they were still somewhat unsatisfied. Feng Qi walked out of the classroom and looked at the middle-aged man standing at the door with a textbook in his arms. He said apologetically, "I'm sorry for delaying your class. Don't worry about it. The content of your class was really exciting. I was shocked after listening to it. If you need to borrow my class in the future, you can contact me. I'll let you have my class at any time," the middle-aged man said with a serious expression. After chatting for a while, the two exchanged contact information. Next, Feng Qi prepared to go to the restaurant to eat. At this moment, his gaze suddenly noticed a figure huddled in the corner of the corridor outside the classroom. At this moment, he was staring at the notebook in his hand with a solemn expression. From time to time, he would add a few strokes to the notebook. He strode to the side of the figure, the veins on his forehead throbbing. Lin Ran. When he heard the shout, Lin Ran looked up in surprise. Then, he scratched his head awkwardly. "Brother Qi, what a coincidence." "Coincidence, your head. Didn't I tell you to leave? Why did you come back?" "I wanted to leave, but I don't know why, but there's a strong suction force coming from the classroom, sucking me in. No matter how hard I try, I can't take a single step. Maybe this is the attraction of studying cultivation arts." Feng Qi was speechless. Hearing Lin Ran talk nonsense with a straight face, he felt helpless. Lin Ran's influence on the future was huge. The consequences he caused were not just the severing of the meridians of millions of people. It was because of Lin Ran's mistake that no one dared to try cultivating the new cultivation arts that were released by the major cultivation art research institutes in the future. This seriously slowed down the development of human cultivation. This influence was so far-reaching that it caused the development of cultivation art to stagnate for the next 100 years. This was because after a cultivation art was created, the subsequent improvements required the support of detailed social data. If no one cultivated a new cultivation art, it would be very easy for it to reach a bottleneck. This was somewhat similar to an example that had once existed in reality. Someone once said that if there was no demand for generations of high-performance chips in the gaming market, even if there were a few more Intels, they would not be able to develop chip technology to its current level. The impact of this would be in all aspects. It could even affect the development of aerospace technology. Therefore, many technological advancements could not be completely solved by a small group of human elites staying in the research institute. Many practical improvements would eventually have to be returned to society. It was the same for cultivation arts. After a new cultivation art was created, it would go through a series of tests. After ensuring its safety, it could be promoted to the public. However, there were still many shortcomings in other aspects. The subsequent improvements would require a huge amount of data to support the updates and improvements. If people lost trust in the new cultivation art, the development of cultivation art would be seriously affected. Therefore, people in the future viewed Lin Ran as a historical scourge, not as scourge. The impact he had caused still existed after his death. In fact, he was also very confused. Since Lin Ran's cultivation art could pass the Tiger Soul Institute's review and there were no problems with it, why would there be problems after it was released? However, regardless of whether there was a hidden reason, or if it was Lin Ran's own problem, it was not wrong to let Lin Ran come into contact with cultivation art content and let him focus on the research of cultivation arts. This way, they could eliminate the problem at the source and prevent a sensational incident of millions of people suddenly dying from happening. He looked at the innocent-looking Lin Ran and felt a little disappointed. He clearly had the talent for studying cultivation arts that ordinary people dreamed of, but he stubbornly wanted to study cultivation arts. He really did not understand what was going on in Lin Ran's head. Was cultivation art really that attractive? In the future, he left a message related to Lin Ran in his personal mailbox. He said that Lin Ran had made him understand one thing deeply. No one's advice would make him realize something. The only thing that could wake someone up from a dream was experience, loss, regret, and injury. It was obvious how deep Lin Ran's obsession with cultivation art research was. It made him understand the philosophy of life in the future. Brother Chi, let's go eat first. I'll go back and continue reading the brick spell theory books you bought for me. Feng Chi looked at the fawning Lin Ran and nodded helplessly. After dinner, he returned to his dorm. Feng Chi opened his computer and logged into the school's website. He discovered that someone had secretly taken a video of his class and uploaded it to Star City University's forum. At this time, Star City University's forum was discussing the concept of God in the human body. The students started a heated discussion about it. Even the teachers of the school joined in and shared their views on the concept of God in the human body. He scrolled through everyone's comments. At this time, a notification of a new email appeared at the bottom right corner of the screen. Then, a red envelope appeared. This piqued Feng Chi's curiosity. Because red emails were the logo of an official organization, blue emails were the internal logo of the school. However, when he opened the email and saw the sender's name, he could not help but be stunned, because this private red email was actually from the Scarlet Institute. Chapter 72. Feng Chi opened the email and read the content. Sender, Scarlet Institute, verified. Recipient, Feng Chi, Star City University, acting teacher, content. Hello, student Feng Chi. I am the director of the genetics department of the Scarlet Institute, Vivian. I accidentally saw your teaching video on Star City University's forum. I am very interested in the concept of God in the human body. The Scarlet Institute will be holding a biological science conference on July 26th. There will be experts from various scientific fields coming to visit, exchange, and learn. You are invited to this conference. If you're interested, you can add my contact information and get in touch with me. 176,212XXXXX. After reading the email, Feng Chi fell in a deep thought. He didn't expect his teaching video to be noticed by the people of the Scarlet Institute. However, this was a risk he had to take, so he wasn't afraid at all. The problem was whether he should accept the Scarlet Institute's invitation or not. In fact, he didn't want to have any contact with the Scarlet Institute. In the real world, the Scarlet Institute and the mysterious organization were taboos. Before he had absolute power and influence, the safest choice was to not contact them. In the future, he would have to take the risk. In the real world, he had to be safe. Although Star City University had strong security measures, the influence of a special organization like the Scarlet Institute was too great. He might be sent to a mental hospital with an excuse. Worse, he might be sent to the guillotine. Therefore, the best choice was to reject the invitation. However, he couldn't show his attitude towards the Scarlet Institute. Thinking of this, he opened his friend list and sent a friend request to the director of the Scarlet Institute's genetics department, Vivian. A moment later, the friend request was accepted. Then, a video call invitation popped up on the desktop. Feng Chi. He had no choice but to accept. After a few seconds, a woman appeared on the screen. She was wearing a white research uniform, and her hair was tied up in a bun at the back of her head. She had a pair of clear and bright phoenix eyes, and her fair skin was rosy. The only regret was the dark circles under her eyes, which made her look especially haggard. Although she didn't wear any jewelry, she had an otherworldly temperament. Seeing Vivian's appearance, Feng Chi suddenly felt that she looked very familiar, as if he had seen her somewhere before. As he pondered, he remembered that when he read Mu Qing's memories, it was a woman who took little Mu Qing away. She seemed to be the one in front of him. He still remembered how conflicted he felt when Mu Qing was taken away by her. However, he didn't expect that after more than 10 years, her appearance hadn't changed at all. Judging from her appearance, it was impossible to tell her exact age. Hello, Feng Chi. I'm the director of the genetics department at the Scarlet Institute. My name is Vivian. The woman introduced herself with a smile. Hello, Director Yu. Feng Qi immediately nodded in response, appearing very polite. In fact, he was cursing in his heart. Old witch, you're obviously not a good person. Feng Qi, have you thought about it? Do you want to accept the invitation to the Scarlet Institute's exchange? Faced with the question, Feng Qi's face showed a trace of helplessness. I'm really sorry. I've been working on a technique research problem recently, so I can't go for the time being. If there's a chance in the future, I'll definitely go. When Vivian heard Feng Qi's answer, a look of surprise appeared on her face. She obviously didn't expect him to refuse. That's too bad, but there are some things that we can talk about through video. Feng Qi, can I ask you a few questions? Go ahead. I've looked up your information. Your teacher is Wang Jinsheng, so it's not difficult to understand your talent in technique research. However, I'm very curious as to why you're so well-versed in the study of the human body structure. Also, how did you come up with the concept of a god in the human body? Faced with the question, Feng Qi was very calm. Before he acted cool, he had already thoroughly understood this part of the information, so he replied with a smile. It's like this. I personally like to read ancient myths and stories. I happened to read a rumor about a god living in the internal organs, so I suddenly had an idea. What Feng Qi said was the experience of the technique researcher who came up with this concept. After his explanation, Vivian on the other end of the video had a look of realization on her face. She then nodded and said, to be able to turn concepts into theoretical knowledge, your talent really amazes me. You definitely won't lose to your teacher, Wang Jinsheng. I'm very interested in the concept of a god in the human body that you came up with. If you have any new developments in the study of the human body, please let me know immediately. It's my honor that this concept is valued by the Scarlet Institute. If there are any new developments, I'll let you know immediately. After that, Feng Qi was ready to end the conversation. At this time, Vivian spoke again. Actually, I've also been studying the combination of a human body and the study of cultivation. However, so far, other than the results of rune transformation, I only have some concepts and incomplete theories. There hasn't been any major progress. Vivian sighed and then continued. Feng Qi classmate, can you fulfill a small request of mine? If you don't want to fulfill it, please hang up quickly. Go ahead, Director Yu. I'll do my best, Feng Qi replied humbly. Can I have a tube of your blood? What do you want my blood for? Feng Qi was stunned when he heard this. Actually, it's not just you. We've collected the blood of all talented young people. The Scarlet Institute's core research direction is biological science. We're very interested in talented geniuses like you. This is also one of our research projects. When he heard this, he immediately thought of the list of geniuses. Faced with this request, he didn't have any reason to refuse. He could only bite the bullet and reply, "No problem. How can I give it to you? I'll send you an automatic blood collection needle. After receiving it, you just need to insert the needle into your body, and the collection will be completed automatically. You can send it to the Scarlet Institute when the time comes." God damn it, so troublesome. I don't know what they're planning to do by collecting so many geniuses' blood. Okay, no problem. By the way, there's one more thing. Are you interested in joining the Scarlet Institute? I can give you an early admission slot. When he heard this, the smile on Feng Qi's face instantly froze. If he accepted Vivian's invitation now, his starting point in the future will be even more dangerous. It's equivalent to opening a spy line. The future is worrying.